Here we go. First, I'm gonna tell you about what we're gonna do in this test, and then I will fill you in on this excellent engine package. So what we're gonna do is called lash loops. This applies to anything with a solid cam, whether it's a roller or a flat tappet. And in fact, it applies to overhead cams or anything that has a solid cam with lash. So let's talk about what is lash. It is the distance between the end of the rocker arm and the top of the valve. So just to inform some of you who may not be completely up to speed on all this, what we're looking at is a push rod here that's acting on a roller lifter and a camshaft. So this push rod goes up and down. The rocker arm, guess what? It rocks back and forth like this to open the valve. And of course the valve spring then closes the valve. So that's how this all operates. But then that lash there is required because with a solid, or let's call it mechanical camshaft, you need a little bit of play there, because otherwise as the engine heats up and cools down, it'll end up breaking parts or hanging a valve open or something like that. The good news is we can use lash for tuning. That's because if there is less lash, it tends to add just a hair of camshaft duration. If there's more lash, it actually takes away a little bit of camshaft duration. The relationship of valve lift is directly proportional to lash. If you tighten up your lash by 10 thousandths of an inch, you just picked up 10 thousandths of an inch of valve lift as well. So what we're gonna do in this test is go through and first take the intake valve and adjust the lash smaller and then larger. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the exhaust side, smaller and then larger. And we're gonna look at our power curves and figure out which one is better. Now this can give you a clue as to your camshaft performance. If you really like looser lash, it tells you you might have picked a camshaft with too much duration, because the looser lash is gonna reduce that duration. And this will be very clear to you as we go through the dyno steps. So let's tell you about the engine combination here. And if you followed Engine Masters at all, you know this pooch, because it's pretty awesome and we've used it a bunch. It's a weirdo though. It's a big block Chevy. It's 478 cubic inches. Now that's really strange, but regardless of that, it runs really well. It's got JE custom pistons for 12¼ to 1 compression. It's got Dart Pro 1 heads on it with 365cc inlet runners. It's topped by a Dart manifold and a Holley 1050 carb. But let's get into the meat of what you really care about on this engine. It has a Crane solid roller camshaft, and it is a no fooling cam. The duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift is 284 on the intake, 296 on the exhaust, and it's on a 112-degree lobe separation angle. It's gonna make about 850 horsepower, and it's gonna scream to 7,500 RPM. It's a great platform to find out if we're gonna be able to adjust our lash and learn if maybe we picked the right camshaft or maybe we didn't. So we're gonna slap the valve cover on and hang this thing on the dyno and find out facts. All right, I think we know what this engine does. We've run it a jillion times at this point.
A few laps.
It does a lot.
Has a lot of laps on it, but I don't know, different weather, different day. Right now you've got the lash at 21 to 22 thousandths.
Both intake and exhaust.
And that's the hot number.
Hot relative to what we test at. We're testing at about 130, 35 degrees.
Okay, yeah. Different than room temperature cold.
Yes.
So how much does it grow on an engine like this?
From like a 75 or 80 degree day, it's probably going to grow 4 thousandths. If we were to lash them at 150 or 60 degrees, I'm seeing about 3 thousandths difference from 19 to 21, 22.
Okay. So you would cold lash this at like 18, and then it'll stretch
19,
to 21, 22,
Yeah.
that neighborhood. Okay, cool. Let's show them again what this engine makes for power. Performed as expected.
That was a good number.
Yeah. So there's our baseline, pretty much as expected. 633.6 pound-feet of torque at 5,700 RPM and 854.1 horsepower up at 7,500. Now, it needs to be noted that we're only running this engine to 7,500. Honestly, we think that it makes peak power at 76, 77.
Yeah.
But we're really worried about the valve control with no shaft rockers, no stud girdle, and stainless steel valves that are probably 2,350, like big old valves, too.
Or, well,
So
I was thinking 2,300, 2,350. They're probably 2,350.
that's our baseline. What's our first step in testing lash?
I don't know. Maybe just leave it alone because it's so good the way it is. I'm afraid that anything we do is going to make less power. I'm thinking the kind of procedure we'll work on is we will go tighter intake and looser intake. Decide which of those two is better, and then leave that there where it's at, and then go to the exhaust and kind of do the same thing and just look for both, whichever combination of those are the best.
So you're going to go put it tighter intake right now. What number?
I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go out there and do 2,000s. That's not going to show us any trends. I'm going to take a swing at it, go like 8 or 10.
Okay. So
Makes sense.
that leaves us with 10.
My only concern is going the other side to do, if we're going to do,
That loose.
getting
Gets
it
kinda
over
rackety.
30,
Yeah.
34 thousands. I think that maybe we do 10 and 10 each way.
So we're going to go out there, and I say we, I mean Lightning Lash Brule, who's going to handle this in like a flash. But we're going to set the intake valves at 12 thousandths of an inch, closing them up about 10, which means we're going to be adding a little bit of lift microscopically and a little bit of duration to the intake side.
About every 6 thousandths is going to be about 1 degree in duration.
So we're not making huge changes here, but we're seeing trends, hopefully. Dulcich disagrees.
What do you mean?
Well, you were telling me off camera that you didn't believe that the lash was going to make a bit of difference because it's in the ramp of the lobe.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see the results because every time I've tried it, it seems like looser was better than tighter.
I mean, like I say, it's unique to every engine. So
Right.
sometimes it doesn't matter, but I've seen as much as 30 getting
But
the
it-
lash correct.
Like I said, I really want to see what this is going to do on this
So
engine.
it's your job and mine to go pull valve covers.
Okay, let's go.
The procedure I use is adjust the intake valve when the exhaust valve is opening and adjust the exhaust when the intake is about half closed. Really, that's nothing more than a visual reference from outside the engine, since I can't see the camshaft, to tell me that the valve I'm adjusting is absolutely on the heel of the camshaft. It's the way I was taught. It works on every 4-stroke engine. You can follow the firing order sequence if you choose, or you can just run down the row. But as long as you keep your eye on that cylinder, then it's the same on every 4-stroke.
Done in record time. I think that was about 8 minutes, start to finish, which is good because we have to do it like 5 more times. Now we've got the lash 10 thousandths of an inch tighter, theoretically adding just a hair lift and a hair of duration.
Only on the intake, right?
Only on the intake, right.
Okay.
Steve
Well,
Brule,
let's see what it does.
it's all yours. Okay, to really know what happened there, we're gonna have to overlay the 2 curves and inspect very, very closely because it's not much. This is all the same. So I'm gonna say that did nothing that we care about. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah, nothing we care about.
Definitely didn't help it, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna go back out there now and loosen the intake rather than tightening it. We're gonna go 10 thousandths looser, which brings us to a lash hot of 32 thousandths. All right, here we go.
This looks like we may be doing just some fine points. I mean, valve lash adjustments. Generally, the camshaft manufacturer will give you a spec, you set it to that spec, and you forget about it. But how do you know if that spec is going to give you the most power? And really, that's what we're after here. On the dyno, we have the opportunity to test what is best. Does it want to be looser? Does it want to be tighter? The lash loop will tell us what the engine really wants.
Now we've gone to loose lash on the intake only. We got 32 thousandths, and so that means we're going to cut a tiny, tiny bit of lift and a tiny bit of duration.
Dulcich had an idea of why he thought this might be better.
Well, I mean, the early part of the ramp is called the lash ramp, where it goes up really mildly as far as the cam profile to take up the lash and not do it too violently. As you open up the lash, you're getting higher up on that lash ramp and you're getting closer to the actual opening ramp or the flank of the cam, so you're going to have a quicker valve action off the seat.
Just
setting.
like looking at duration at 50 thousandths tap at lift versus 200. I mean, obviously it's not that extreme with the lash, but you're saying it's hitting later on the lobe, and so the lobe is more aggressive at that point.
Yeah.
But it's going to be harder on parts too.
Yeah,
right?
right.
Theoretically, it should still be soft enough where it'll be fine at this setting. You're 32?
Yeah, 32.
Okay, let's find out. Surprising. Wow.
Yeah.
Wait till you see these numbers. Pretty impressive. So what we saw as the power was going by is that it made a lot more power with the loose lash on the intake. So less duration ended up making more horsepower, 860.5 horsepower, the best we've ever seen out of this engine.
Oh.
And look at that, it absolutely helped it everywhere, and peak torque of 647.9. Best it's ever done, but the real story is look what it did everywhere in the curve. And not surprisingly, it's better down low than it is up top because we reduced duration. Wow.
But it really came in on the roll in.
Well, I mean, I think it's pointing us in a direction in the RPM range we're running, and I think it might be saying we picked a little big.
So this was 284 at 50. It's telling us we want like 278? Or do you think it's telling us we want 283?
You know, the best cam guys I know will look you straight in the face and go, this should do this.
Right?
There's no one answer. I mean, we'd have to
Right.
run 3 of them through there and look for the best. That's why we test.
Right now, I'm saying this cam's the right cam with 32 degrees. 32.
But it might be the way that it's
valve.
opening the valve now.
Yeah.
But can we drive it around, race it at 32 thousandths lash, or is it going to beat itself up? It's going to beat the tip of the valve. It's going to beat the axle and the roller.
I think it's okay.
I think you'd have to look at the specific lobe and find out what's happening at that point when it opens to see how bad it's slapping it around.
Steve-O, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but old school mechanical cams, like back in the day, it was not unusual to be 32 thousandths as recommended.
And a lot of that, they were flat tappets.
Flat tappets.
And they...
Back in your day.
Oh, I will. Wait till we're
You
done.
can reach me from here.
Get off my lawn.
Right.
Yeah, you know, the old Duntop 3030s, a lot of that stuff. But I will
Yeah.
tell you today, I still see a number of camshafts come in here that have lash settings hot in the 28 and 32 range.
That's why I'm not afraid of it beating stuff up, because it is not a really uncommon setting.
I think we can all agree, wow.
Yeah.
And so the next thing that we're going to go do is tighten up the exhaust lash.
This is a really, really
This is all-
educational test.
It's way better than I
because
expected.
Look at how much torque is gained right there at the bottom of the curve.
huge.
Nobody would expect that from, you know, a lash setting. This is the right test engine for this. It's got a really wide RPM range. It's high RPM. It's got a big cam, so it may be more sensitive to a lash
for
adjustment
sure.
than.
But whether it's a percentage or a number, it all matters. Everything that we're doing to this thing. Look, we started out, you know, a while back working on this thing, and it was what, an 800
800
horsepower
horsepower
engine,
motor.
and we haven't done a lot of trickery here, and we're at 860. We haven't changed the camshaft.
Right.
We haven't done rock arms. We haven't done any real hard parts. We've done kind of like oil pans and vacuum pumps and the stuff that a guy's going to do,
how
picking
you
away at
whittle
stuff.
away at it, yeah.
How much does 60 horsepower cost if you just go try and buy that?
Yeah.
I think we bargained hunted here, you know, as far as finding that kind of power.
So next up, we're going to go out there and tighten the lash on the exhaust side. And obviously, we're leaving the intake right where it is.
We are.
All right, ready? Another 8 minutes, more power. Here we go again, this time tight lash on the exhaust. And of course, we left the intake where it was. Go. So on that pull, we made 861 horsepower and we lost a little bit of torque, 643.7. So net, it did nothing. Let's see if it actually lost a little. Yeah, it lost a little bit in the mid-range. Yeah. Tight lash exhaust sucked. We're gonna move on to loosening it up. Ready?
Okay, we're well practiced this now.
Yes, we are. Okay, I can't be disappointed at this point, but what's your call? Loose lash on the exhaust, better or worse?
At least better down low.
It's going to be better everywhere.
Okay, I hope so. We're gonna see 865 horsepower-wise?
I think we'll break 860 is my prediction.
We already have.
Have we?
860.5, and we ran 861 just after that.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see the number, right?
Yep.
That's a tough number to beat. but we're
Yeah.
gonna try.
All right, Brule, do that thing you do. Okay, will it be better? Will it be worse? We always have the knee jerk of wanting to talk about it, but you gotta look at the actual data. That says 855 horsepower, down 5, 649.7 pound-feet of torque, up microscopically. How about lay it over and see what we did? So what we're looking at here is the red line is what we deemed earlier today to be our best pass yet. It was the one where we had loose lash only on the intake side. The black line is the last test that we made where it's still loose on the intake, but also loose on the exhaust. And it's interesting because it actually ended up making more low end loosening up the exhaust and not as much up at the top.
This doesn't surprise me. I mean, shortening up the exhaust some, you need the additional exhaust for engine speed, and we're revving this thing up there pretty good.
Yeah.
If this were a 7,000 RPM combination, that probably wouldn't be there and wouldn't matter. We would never see it. But it picked up the bottom, which is kind of...
Yeah.
But then if you were drag racing this engine, you've got at least a 5500 converter, and that really doesn't matter. So I think bottom line is it doesn't care about the exhaust lash. I mean, it does tell us that the engine at very low speeds prefers less duration on the exhaust side, but not up at the top.
Yeah, you know, it leads me to want to try a camshaft that's very dissimilar to what it is, work on the intake side some, but widen the lobe separation a little bit. Try and help pick up this engine speed some more once that rocker arm thing you do is going to happen, and we get some shaft rockers on it, some other stuff, we can rev it up to 8,000.
Because this thing's on a 112, you're saying you would like put the cam at a 114 lobe separation
And
angle?
let it run
and
up
let it
there.
eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good because I was going to ask you guys what you would conclude from this.
I don't know.
Where do you go from here? Do you change the
Well, I
camshaft?
don't know. I mean, it depends on where you're at. I mean, if this was mine and I had have that cam, I mean, going out and buying another cam, whereas I'm getting pretty good performance out of it as it is, I'd probably just optimize the lash and call it a day.
So that's the practical side, which is a
Yeah.
great argument. Let's say that you're not spending money and you wanted to put a different cam in it. Would you, or
Oh,
would
I
you
know
call
exactly.
this cam, good?
I know exactly what I would do.
What?
I would ask Brule.
Okay,
And then I
Brule.
would just widen the SEP a little bit, maybe
Yeah.
add a couple of degrees of exhaust duration, shorten up the intake, and see what it does.
Exactly, because it's going to like that longer exhaust for engine speed as well as the nitrous. So that's a win-win if you're headed
The
that
nitrous.
direction. Oh, you hadn't planned on that yet?
Duh.
No, that's done. So
Right.
I think what Steve's onto has a lot of merit to it. Just
The valve
opening
opening
quicker.
rate.
By today's standards, we are not pushing lift at all. We're below 800.
I know.
Guys don't do stuff below 900 anymore.
What's wrong with us? Yeah. That was really interesting.
good.
That was cool.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And more power than we've ever had
Ever.
from that motor. Dude, this thing just made its personal best record power for 0 simoleons.
I know, and that's always an accomplishment. And you know what? It speaks to something that's very important to me, and that's like fine-tuning and adjustment. Why does one guy's motor with the same parts run way harder than somebody else's?
Yeah, we found a lot of power on this thing. I mean, 25 pound-feet way down low.
Yeah.
And 8 up top and better everywhere in the curve for literally not $1, which is really cool. But we learned something about how our camshaft duration, could be improved with the different lash and everything. Would you ever bother to change that with rocker arm ratio instead of with lash. Like this thing has a 1.7 rocker on it. If it liked more duration, would you put a 1.8 rocker on it?
I would consider it if I was going to replace the whole valve train anyway. In the case of this engine, maybe we want 8,000 RPM instead of 7,500. Maybe
Well,
we
we
want
do.
shaft rockers instead of stud mounted. And at that point, well, the 1.8 will be awfully tempting.
I feel there's one last really important point that I need to make for the audience though. What we just showed you is a procedure that you can use on your engine. And you can do it not just on a dyno, but also at the drag strip.
Oh yeah.
The key is you don't want to just take the lash numbers that we just learned on this engine and apply them to your engine. It really is specific combination to combination.
Oh yeah, your results will vary. That's the right lash for this combination, but your engine might want something completely different.
The stuff that we show on Engine Masters can be applied to any engine. As I mentioned earlier, you can do this with an overhead cam 4-cylinder and it still works.
Or a Jeep engine.
See? Engine Masters, improving your life every time. You know, some of my favorite tests on Engine Masters are when we get to do things that the viewers have specifically asked for, and that's what this is. It's gonna be 2.5-inch pipes with dual exhaust versus 3-inch pipe on single exhaust. Here's how we're gonna run it. We got both turbo mufflers and straight through muffler designs. First, we are gonna run twice pipes with 2.5-inch exhaust turbos, then we're gonna switch off to straight throughs. Next, we're gonna build a 3-inch single exhaust system with a 3-inch turbo muffler and a 90-degree merge. And then we're gonna change it up to a Y-style merge, and we're gonna try that with both the turbo muffler and the straight through muffler. So you're gonna get a whole bunch of information and data here. Our victim is gonna be right here. This 351 Ford that you've seen before on the show, it is a basic rebuilt short block. Nothing special, cast piston, stock rod, stock crank. You can duplicate this thing easily. And to do that, here's how you're gonna throw it together. You're gonna get a Comp Cams hydraulic roller camshaft. It's the XR282. You're gonna buy some AFR cylinder heads. These are the 165cc inlet runner. And by the way, we've run both the AFR 195s and the 165s on this engine. They make exactly the same power. So buy the cheaper head, the 165. Now up top, we've got a Wyand Stealth dual plane intake manifold. We've got a 750 Holley XP carburetor, and overall this thing adds up to about 9.5 to 1. Now the thing that's different about the engine compared with how we normally test it is that it has shorty headers on it. Normally we would have a full long tube, but I figured there's nobody who's considering running single exhaust who has long tube headers. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't package well underneath the car. And so I figure most of you guys are gonna have shorties like this if you're considering the single exhaust, so that's what we ran. All right, now I'm gonna throw it to my buddy Steve Dulcich in the dyno cell. He's gonna show you how we put together our very first system with the 2.5-inch duals.
Okay, we've got our baseline exhaust system set up on our 351 Ford. Now we've got shorty headers up front feeding these 2.5-inch head pipes, a pair of Summit turbo mufflers following that, and some short tail pipes. So we're gonna take it into the dyno cell and we're gonna get our baseline numbers.
All right, Dulcich showed you our choking dual exhaust that we just put on this thing.
Oh boy.
And our shorty headers. The thing is, earlier in the day, we actually ran the same engine with long tube headers and open exhaust, and it was interesting what we found on the tune-up, putting the full exhaust on it.
It got quite a bit richer from the 3,000 to 4,500, let's say, and then it kind of trimmed itself normal. It wouldn't surprise me if it got a little richer everywhere, but I was surprised that it was actually very similar at the top.
Well, but normally when you put an exhaust system on versus open headers, it does make it richer. So that's something to consider if you go to the drag strip and uncork. Yeah, you might have to rejet if you've got it right to begin with.
And we've got that tuned out, so we're pretty much ready to go, right?
His anxiety is saying, fire it up and run it. All right, we're gonna fire it up, warm it up to 130 degrees of water temp, and make our baseline full with dual exhaust and turbo mufflers. Did you run it yet? It's so quiet.
I love it. The best thing about testing mufflers is how quiet the day is.
Here's our power curve for our baseline. We made 405.3 pound-feet of torque at 4,100 RPM and 414.7 horsepower at 6,400 RPM.
Not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No, versus the open exhaust and long tubes, that's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do is pull up a test here that's actually from a prior episode, which is this exact same engine, same configuration, different valve covers, and long tube headers and open exhaust. So you can just kind of see the difference that the dual exhaust and mufflers are gonna make on the power curve.
Boom.
Ooh.
There you go. Clearly, red lines are open long tubes, black lines are the short tube headers and the full exhaust. So you can see what you're giving up. It's quite a bit.
The engine's identical other than the exhaust. I mean, it's
100%.
same carburetor, same intake, same everything. It's absolutely identical. So
That's quite a bit.
Big difference, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot. But you can't drive around with open headers, so.
Well, maybe you can't.
Oh. You sometimes.
Right, see? All right, let's see if we can make it a little bit better. I'd like to run out there and throw on some straight through mufflers now. Okay, we're gonna go change the mufflers, be right back. How many guys does it take to change 2 mufflers?
I don't know.
Me and Steve and 1 pork chop. Yeah, that went in fine. Screw it. We're taking off these so-called turbo mufflers, which you cannot see through at all. They have one tube that goes in here, and then the exhaust has to come around through another tube right here. Now, what we're installing is a straight-through muffler. You can see right through them. So this is kind of a bonus test. In the middle of dual exhaust versus single, you're also gonna see turbo mufflers versus straight-through on both the duals and on the single exhaust. We're all set up here for a comparison of these straight-through mufflers to what we ran before, which was the turbo mufflers. But before we do that, I kind of want to make a point, which is we always use these cheap Chinese knockoff mufflers. So the thing is, I honestly believe this is going to perform the same right here as an expensive version of the same muffler, but it's the longevity that I wanted to point out probably isn't there. I think you had a real-world example of that.
Yeah, I put those really cheapy turbo mufflers on a truck with like a 450 horsepower engine in 1 month. They were blown out
all the
and
packing.
they were making all kinds of really
Yeah.
bad vibration and noises and stuff. So
I'm sold they didn't have Chinese mufflers when I was doing
Yeah.
it. So
Well, I guess
It was
the
all
difference
good
would be the knockoff Flowmasters. There's nothing to blow out of them unless they just couldn't weld a baffle in and it comes out. But that is the element that we can't see on the dyno, is the longevity of some of this stuff. But nonetheless, we've got the $40 cheapo Chinese MagnaFlow knockoffs on here, and we're going to find out if they make more power than the Summit turbos. Seems better. I'm not sure how
Pretty
much
good.
better.
I think it's pretty close.
So here are our numbers with the straight-through mufflers and the dual exhaust. We made 412.8 pound-feet of torque at 4,200 RPM and 420.5 horsepower at 6,200. Why don't you go ahead and lay over the turbo muffler? I think we'll see it actually did make quite a bit of difference. There you go.
It did.
remember we were talking about the sound of it down low?
Yeah.
Shows it all right there.
That is a
Yeah.
really significant difference. I wouldn't have expected that.
Really interesting to me about how down here where there isn't as much airflow through the exhaust, it makes that big of a difference.
I can't tell you why, but what I heard was
Yeah.
a slight misfire. You know how sometimes a carburetor will struggle with metering at lower engine speeds? That's almost what it sounded like with the other mufflers on it, and it seemed to clean up here. So
Well, we also noticed that it runs leaner with this muffler than it did with the other one because it's less of a restriction, less
Yeah.
back pressure. All right, well, you can see that definitely the straight-through muffler made more power than the turbo, which is no surprise. We saw that before when we did our muffler shootout. But what's going to be interesting now is when we strike this and go to the single 3-inch exhaust. And when we do that, I also want to test turbo versus straight-through to see if it makes a greater difference or not. All right, let's go make 3-inch single exhaust.
I think it'll be better.
Steve always goes against logic.
There's some very kind of similar. Yeah.
Here we go with our single exhaust with 3-inch tubing, and we'll be testing it with a turbo type muffler. Now, the first test here has got one bank entering the other bank at a perfect 90-degree angle, and I'm thinking that is gonna be hideous for flow, but we're gonna try it out, because most muffler shops will put stuff together like that. So we're gonna try 90-degree, and then we're gonna go in and Y them and see if it makes it any better. Let's fire it up. I like this because it's a test we've never done.
I like it because it's really quiet.
It's really quiet now.
I like it.
But what's your guess on power kill with the 90-degree exhaust merge?
Hardly anything.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going with Dulcich. I think the increased area maybe kind of hopefully balances
Even though
it
it's
out
merging
some.
like this?
And it might not even be the exhaust that's stopping the power level where it's at.
Okay, we got it all warmed up. We're ready to fire up and run it with the single exhaust with a turbo muffler and the 90-degree merge.
We're like the guys at the muffler shop, Brule, saying, oh, that's not good enough. It's a 3-inch pipe.
I like it when you go to the muffler shop, and what do they always tell you?
You need back pressure.
An engine likes a little back pressure. Well, how about that?
Yeah.
No. Here are your new and not improved power numbers with the single exhaust. 398.9 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM and 374.1 horsepower, all the way up at 6,300. But the real story is going to be when we lay it over. As usual, the curve tells all.
I've never seen three guys smile this much over that huge of a loss in power.
It's hideous. So we're going to show you the single exhaust with the 90-degree merge paired with the 2.5-inch dual exhaust. Oh, fail. Obviously, red lines here are dual exhaust, and the black is the devastating single 3-inch.
We're looking like, 45 horsepower.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it killed it.
Death. I think with the merge, you're essentially creating a restriction. That pressure coming into the pipe right there has got to be a restriction to flow on that other side of the engine.
Yeah, that exhaust, when it tees, it doesn't know whether it's supposed to go left or right. I mean, it's
exactly.
got some exhaust helping direct it.
Not only is its flow being backed up by the T, but it's also creating a high pressure area, which is a restriction for the other side.
It is richer, but there's no jet in the world.
There's no fixing
that's going to fix that.
Yeah. Actually, it's a good point to make, though, which is we're seeing that it was running about 12.6 to 1 air-fuel ratio at wide open. It's now 11.6 to 1. So should you choose to actually have this on your car, you might want to look at rejetting your carburetor or tuning your EFI or something.
Yeah.
That is just the worst.
That was a lot of work for such a disappointing outcome.
Well, we have to go work more now. We'll go put that Y in, and I think it's going to help it a ton. I'm counting on the Y to let us win, so let's go install it. Yeah, and this will work. So we can mock it all up.
Let me show you what's going to be key to improving our single exhaust system here. That is going to be this merge. It's a much more streamlined entry into the single portion of the exhaust system. So, Troy, slap that on.
So we're about to fire it up for our very first test with that Y-shaped merge instead of the 90. All right, guys, I have to ask, why?
Why? Why the why?
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 What would happen if it doesn't do anything, Freiberger? How would you explain that away?
The muffler's the restriction? I don't know.
The obvious thing is you have to cam it for the merge.
Oh, that's it.
If you don't cam
You
it
guys
for the
have
merge,
the wrong cam.
Here we go with our first test with that Y-shaped merge and the single 3-inch exhaust. We still have the turbo muffler in place. It doesn't matter.
But it does.
It was a little better, but not good.
It was a lot better.
Was it?
Where I said it was going to be.
I didn't see the torque being any better.
Oh, really?
Really?
I think so.
All right, so our peak numbers with the Y merge are 397.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. And up top, we have 383.5 horsepower at probably 6,200 RPM. The question is, how did it do versus the 90 degree? The peak numbers are lower. Oh, you're saying down here it was better.
Yeah.
So the black line is the Y, the red is the 90. It didn't make the difference I was hoping for. That is weird. You think that's all fuel metering? That's back pressure?
I think it was actually, I could sense almost a misfire because of the restriction with the others, T versus the Y.
Yeah.
And it was just much cleaner rolling in. I could actually hear it, not just see it in the numbers.
You know what I postulate?
I have a postulation as well. Let's hear yours.
I think at low gas velocity, at low RPM, that 90-degree merge, the gas coming out of the other bank can go either way and make reversion worse.
That was my thought too. And then once engine speed comes up, it's actually got enough force coming this way to sort of drag the rest of it that way. That's amazing. Right there is where the Y really shows itself, and up top.
Yeah,
It actually made more. It made almost 10 numbers up top. So the Y is better.
Better.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We just established that Y merge was in fact way better than the 90-degree merge, especially way down at the bottom and way up at the top. But the whole curve is still ridiculously far down from dual exhaust. So to try and save that a little bit, I want to run out there and remove the turbo muffler and install a straight through muffler and see if it makes a difference.
That'll be quick and easy.
Quick and easy, unless we burn ourselves. Oh wait, Steve Brule. That means burn, doesn't it?
Yes,
That's your
in
job.
French, it does mean burn.
It means burn. Let's go. You ready for my best Joe Friday?
Oh, yeah.
All right, single exhaust. This is your last chance to do the right thing, or I'm going to throw you in the trash and never look back.
Was
Was it pretty good?
Yeah.
Throwing you in the trash can, throwing away the key.
Oh, yeah. It's got a one-way ticket.
This will be our final test. We're going to do that single exhaust with the Y merge with the straight through muffler. It's kind of the last chance for the single exhaust. What did you do? Did you run it cold?
No.
No?
No. I installed a muffler with Mr. Dulcich.
It made more, well, I'm not saying anything until we look at the curves, because I always open my mouth and then I'm wrong. Let's have a look at the total power.
I think you are going to be shocked. I was watching the numbers fly by, and it was pretty good.
Wow. Okay, we just made more power than we've seen all day with the single exhaust and one straight through muffler. 422.9 pound-feet of torque and 424.5 horsepower. Now, that is better than the dual exhaust straight through mufflers on it. As a matter of fact, let's overlay that. Wow! Look at this. Okay, the red lines are the dual exhaust with the straight through mufflers, and black is single exhaust with the straight.
I know.
Well, it's bigger.
It's not.
The head pipes are. And then it's got a nice
head
clean
pipes are.
a nice clean merge and obviously enough muffler. So it really shouldn't be that shocking.
What it really demonstrates a lot, too, is the difference between the turbo-style muffler and the straight-through. The
Yeah.
flow potential difference when there's only one.
Yeah.
With two of them, it doesn't matter all that much. With one,
It really made the difference.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about why the dual versus singles like this. We've got 3-inch pipe going all the way from the header.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas we had the 2.5-inch before, and that might be the difference there.
And then that merge may not be that bad of a restriction, really, into the 3-inch pipe and out the tailpipe. Boom. Just no
Yeah.
crossover. Maybe with the crossover, it would have filled in a little bit of that bottom end that we're seeing lacking there.
We did that test before, and I don't remember the results, but I don't think it was anywhere near this drastic.
my recollection is the H was better, but the X pipe was no better than
Versus
the
the
H.
H.
But the H was better than no crossover at all.
So you're right, that could be a thing also. We have to look at what you just brought up, which is the difference between the straight-through muffler and the turbo muffler with single exhaust. So let's have a look at that. So next up, we're going to compare the single exhaust with the turbo muffler versus the single exhaust with the straight-through muffler. And that is also a massive change. Wow! Look at that. The difference is even more radical. Red lines are going to be the turbo muffler, and black is the straight through. Nothing else different about it. So that tells you that one muffler cannot handle the flow of all 8 cylinders.
Particularly if
turbo.
It's not an adequate muffler. You've got a smaller cross-sectional area, so you better be making use of all of it with a very efficient muffler.
Wow.
Now, a lot of this exhaust stuff I look at and I go, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It works. Then
This is huge. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
How much power does the single exhaust with the good muffler make versus the dual exhaust with the bad muffler? Look at that.
Wow. The single kills it.
The single is in black and the dual exhaust with the turbo mufflers is in red.
Well, as you get restricted in cross-sectional area, what percentage smaller is a single 3 compared to 2.5s?
29%.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a big change in area. So you better make sure if you're going to run the single, you better be very efficient as far as component selection and the merge. And I mean, everything's got to be right to get that kind of result.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, out of a single, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I guess the last question I have is, what do we feel is the crossover point where you need to be looking at this data? Like, I think this engine at 430 horsepower in a normal configuration is the high end of what anybody would be considering using for single exhaust. You know, I'm thinking that most of the guys actually paying attention to this test probably have something more like 300 to 350 horsepower standard cruising truck. I think it still matters.
Oh, absolutely. At wide open, it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I learned a whole lot more than I expected to.
It was fun stuff.
Yeah, that was
this
cool.
is good.
I love it when we do a test we've never done before.
Yeah.
Man, this is cool. The big thing we saw here is that we ended up making more power with 3-inch single exhaust and a great muffler than we did with 2.5-inch exhaust
I still
and
have
duals.
I still can't even accept it, Freiberger.
I know.
It has to be true.
It was true, but the thing is, we went into the dyno cell off camera, did a bunch of other tests trying to figure out why, and ultimately I'm gonna say that we ended up with more questions than we did answers, as we often do. The only takeaways that I have firmly are, I believe you can use 3-inch single exhaust if you have a great muffler, if you've got a Y pipe, and if you've got an engine making less than 400 horsepower.
Yeah, it's a minefield. You got to do it right. And then
Yeah.
the results pretty much speak for themselves.
I think the other questions that we saw about why the 3-inch made more power really has to do with the packaging and what we were able to do on the dyno that you might not be able to do in the car.
We had 3-inch pipe all the way through the whole 3-inch system and 2.5 with the dual exhaust system. So I think the head pipes probably could have helped the single exhaust system, and it was long and it had the merge way back behind the engine, way further for dyno considerations. So it had those advantages for sure.
Yeah, stuff we were able to do in the dyno that you couldn't do in the car. But nevertheless, that was a learning experience. It was way more mind-blowing than I thought it would be from a very basic test.
So Freiberger, question. You've got a street machine, what do you do? 3-inch single or dual 2.5 pipes?
Dulcich. Twice pipes,
Oh,
bro.
yeah, you know it.
Every single
Boom.
time.
Me
Oh,
too.
man. All the love, all the learning, every time on Engine
Engine
Masters. I blame you for this. You know why? Because viewers have asked us for like 2 years to do an episode all about carburetor spacers. You would ask, why have we resisted? Well, the thing is, these carb spacers, they really change their effect on performance depending on the intake manifold design, the engine displacement and camshaft, the carburetor that's used. There's a lot of different effects that they can have on performance. We think we've put together a combination here that is sort of as broad and representative as possible for you. But first, let's talk about what a carburetor spacer is. There it is. It's as simple as that. It's one of the cheapest things that you can do to change the performance of your engine. You simply put it on your intake manifold right there, slap your carburetor on top of it. And it affects the distribution of the manifold, the fuel curve, all sorts of things that you will see. The thing is, there's a lot of different types of carburetor spacers. This one is what we call an open. This is what we call a 4-hole. These are both 1 inch tall. You can get them like up to 2 or 3 inches tall. There's other variations that are like a tapered combo, or ones with steps, or ones that are just split in the middle. But let's be honest, these are the two that really matter in the world. The other thing that's different about these is that They come in all kinds of materials. You can get them in wood, you can get them in plastic with little rubber inserts that keep the carburetor from vibrating. You can get them in die-cast aluminum, billet aluminum, or what this is, which is phenolic resin. What is phenolic resin? I questioned it because thermoquads have the main body made out of phenolic resin, but what does that even mean? It's based on an organic compound called phenol, and it's mixed with formaldehyde and some acid and stuff like that, and it becomes hard plastic. You know what's made out of phenolic resin? Carburetor spacers and pool balls. All right, there's completely random information for you. Let me tell you what we're gonna do for the test today. So the victim we've got here today is our 383 small block Chevy that you have seen in a zillion episodes of Engine Masters, but we've changed it up a little bit for reliability. So this is the same Blueprint Engines short block that you've seen over and over, but we kept on seeing a valve float problem at the top end, and Steve Brule really wanted to fix that because he was worried in some tests that it might affect the results, and so he wanted valve train stability. He started by putting solid roller lifters on our hydraulic roller lifter camshaft. It's the same cam we've always had. The degrees of duration at 50 are 230 on the intake, 236 on the exhaust, and for performance, we also changed the cylinder heads. This is an aluminum Dart Pro 1. It's got a 215cc cast intake port. Now we're also gonna change the intake manifolds on this thing, including a baseline with our Dart single plane. Now here's the mind-blowing thing. All of those changes, and believe it or not, it makes exactly the same power curve that it made before all of those changes, but it is way more stable up top. Now in our testing, you're gonna see we're gonna switch from this Dart single plane to the Dart dual plane intake manifold, and that's because we know from experience that the 4-hole and the open spacer perform radically differently depending on what intake manifold you put on them. And so we're gonna kick it off with the single plane, then move to the dual plane, and you will find out the magic of the carburetor spacer. How simple is that?
So for this test, what we've decided to do is add a couple of sensors that we don't always use. And one is the air hat, which measures airflow that the engine is drawing in cubic feet per minute. And the other one is these 802 sensors. They're oxygen sensors, not dissimilar to what you have in your regular passenger car, but we have one in every cylinder so we can identify the air-fuel ratio in every cylinder. We're potentially only looking at 2 or 3 horsepower differences in some of these spacers. And so we want to be able to identify where the gain or loss is occurring. And so, like they say, you can never have too much data. So we're going to go in, baseline this thing, get some numbers, and move on from there. Spacers are tough to predict. The only one I think I can predict, I'll probably be wrong, is the open on a dual plane.
Dispense with the chit-chat, gentlemen. Baseline it, Brule. I'm
Yes,
cutting
sir.
to the chase.
Wow. Taking charge, Freiberger.
With authority.
What's gotten into you?
Performed as expected.
Yes.
Well, there's our baseline with no carburetor spacer whatsoever. Basically the same exact power we've seen with this engine a zillion times that we've tested it. 466.5 pound-feet of torque at 4,300 RPM and up at 60, oh no, this time it's 6,000 RPM peak, 469.4 horsepower. And where do you want to start? 4-hole spacer or open spacer?
Let's do the 4-hole first.
I concur. I was thinking 4-hole first and then the open spacer for the big number.
Is that because we all think that the open spacer has some potential for a little more power? So
Not necessarily. The thing about spacers is they can be really unpredictable. So
Wait a minute. Off camera, you predicted 7 horsepower with the open.
Yeah.
On this manifold.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going 0. But you never know until you try.
I'm going with you this time.
Okay, 4-holer. See, he said this time, like I'm normally wrong.
No.
Man, Brule's just on a roll. Oh, fail! The studs are too short.
Take it off.
How do they do that? Those must be for a 3/4 inch spacer. All right, Brule, take it off.
All right, we've got the 4-hole spacer installed. We're getting the air hat on so we can check to see if there's any measurable change in airflow, which may attribute to a power change or not. We don't know yet, but it's another piece of data to grab. Dulcich and I have got the 4-hole spacer installed, so we're going to go check it out.
While you guys were buttoning up the air hat, I was toasting myself a delectable Pop-Tart.
You're not even allowed to eat those, Freiberger.
It was against the advice of my nutritionist, I have to say.
Priorities.
Oh, well.
So what's going to happen with the 4-hole, Dulcich?
I think it'll make 2 more foot-pounds of torque, and that's it.
I've learned not to question him.
He's always good for
Well,
a
no,
laugh.
I mean, and that's going to be below peak torque.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I say run it.
Made more power.
I didn't see much of a change in air-fuel ratio,
No.
which is interesting.
Before we look at power, we're looking at air-fuel ratio. We've seen that spacers can affect the signal at the carburetor, which will change the air-fuel ratio. And what are you seeing here?
Pretty close
Richer
down there.
low and leaner at the top, which the leaner at the top is puzzling to me.
As a general rule, would you say the 4-hole tends to draw on the carburetor more than the open?
Yes.
Here's what we're looking at for our first pull with the 4-hole spacer: 467.3 pound-feet of torque, 474.6 horsepower, which appears to be a little bit up from no spacer at all. Is that because it's lean, or is that because of the spacer?
It's made a couple of foot-pounds more at the bottom and more horsepower at the top. Who'd have thunk it?
Could this be because it's lean up there?
There's another thing you need to look at, and that's going to be pounds per hour of fuel, because it may have different distribution, which will show sometimes an air-fuel ratio, and it's actually using almost the same amount of fuel.
Okay.
It's pulling more fuel, and it's showing a leaner mixture,
Right. So
and
let's
it's making more power.
So let's look at the
distribution.
cylinder distribution, yeah. That was very astute, Dulcich.
Well, you know, I'm a student of the engine science.
I really liked it. It's still 14.6 to 11.5.
Well, let's compare it to another.
Yeah, let's see if it's tighter without the spacer. There you go. So red is no spacer, black is
tighter
with
at
the
the top.
4-hole. It's
See that?
here,
Where it's making more power. It
almost
is
tighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it affected the manifold distribution tiny bit.
And it actually helped on the bottom, because you don't have those 2 that are way out of the field there at the low end that are 15s.
These 2?
Yeah. So it did help.
I'm going to say it's more cylinder to cylinder than
Then,
any other
Yeah.
single thing.
so no spacer moved more air, but with the spacer, made a little bit more power.
Very
So
small bit, like 4 CFM or something.
manifold distribution.
Yeah, that looks a little tighter. So that's more than any one single thing. I think that's probably.
I think we're out of tune-up options. We go straight to the open spacer. So it's easy as that, which is why you can test this stuff at home or on the drag strip just by stocking up on spacers and flopping them underneath the carburetor. I finished my Pop-Tart, so I'm ready to run the open spacer.
All right.
What do you think the open spacer does?
We might see that it needs more jet, maybe. I don't think it's going to make more power because I think this manifold's already too big for the engine. All right, fire it up, let's go. And the open spacer makes 469.9 pound-feet of torque and 472 horsepower, which is up just a hair, I believe, but we need to look at the overlay to compare. Let's compare it first to no spacer whatsoever. So this is a look at the red line, which is no spacer at all, and the black line, which is the open spacer. So you can see that the open spacer lost a tiny bit of power in the neighborhood of 4,000 RPM, and it made power from 4,500 all the way up, but then difference gets pretty negligible.
Yeah, curiously, it really moved up the peak torque
Yeah, I was
RPM.
looking at that too, 4700s from 4300.
There's like a blip right there where it came up. But now we have to compare the open spacer that we just tested to the 4-hole. So the 4-hole is in red and the open spacer is in black. Basically what we saw in our comparison between the two spacers, the open and the 4-hole, is that they traded places in power throughout the curve, but none of it was significant enough. What we're looking at now is air-fuel ratio distribution. In black is the open spacer and in red is the 4-hole, and you can see that the red 4-hole is actually better.
It's grouped from tighter.
Yeah, which makes sense actually because it's doing something about the velocity through the carburetor, whereas the open spacer's just adding plenum volume. Now, trend-wise, the 4-hole on the single-plane manifold tends to improve like low-end drivability, signal to the carburetor, and in this case, distribution. And I think we're gonna see the opposite when we go to the dual plane, which is that it's gonna prefer the open instead of the 4-hole.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go find that out right now as we go install the dual plane and do it all over again. With the carburetor off this, you can see that this Dart intake is a single plane, wide open plenum. This would be typically designed for something that makes more RPM, more power, more displacement than this engine. The reason we're running two different manifolds is because spacers can have a different effect depending on whether it is a single plane or a dual plane. So this is the dual plane that we will be installing. This is an air gap style dual plane. It is much more suited to the type of engine this is. We're going to anticipate seeing this thing make a whole lot more torque than that. And we will show you the power difference between these two intakes before we start messing around with spacers. We've already done our first pull with a dual plane. It was really rich. We went out there and leaned it out by 9 jet sizes overall, which is a big whack. And we're gonna see if it makes a difference in power. Doesn't care.
Kind of poochy, I think, at the top.
Yeah, I would say so. So after the tune-up on the dual plane, where we went in and leaned it out some, it actually just came down a hair in power. We're looking at 474 pound-feet of torque and 454.6 horsepower. Look at that. The red lines here show the single-plane intake manifold with the 4-hole spacer on it, and the black is this dual plane with no spacer. And you can see the red lines are just grouped much more tightly, and the dual plane is much bigger. And so it's not a matter of runner length making the power difference. We think it's probably that there's some cylinders that just aren't in the mood to make power because we're barely feeding them any fuel, or we're feeding them too much.
Yeah, I mean, it tilted the curve, so I mean, the runner length is taking care of it down there, but I think we've just got issues up there with fueling the cylinders. Cylinders at 16-to-1 don't make power.
Right.
Yep, and there's nothing you can do about that in the carburetor to fix it.
Maybe
But
the spacers may help.
the 4-hole spacer.
It may.
It may.
That may help.
We don't know. Is that our next step?
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna go out there and put the 4-hole spacer atop the dual plane intake manifold. Okay, 465.8 pound-feet of torque, 455.5 horsepower. We're pretty much saying that's a 0. But to really know, we have to compare it to the curve of the regular dual plane with no spacer. Okay, red lines are the no spacer, black lines is the 4-hole. It's smoothed out the curve. The range here is not that different. We're talking about 12.4 to 12.8, negligible, but this is flatter.
Okay, I could say we can count out air fuel. Let's look at the individual cylinder distribution.
I'm gonna read you off the cylinders in order, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8. 15.9 to 1, 12.9, 14.4, 13.8, 14.1, 12.5, 14.9, and 12.0. What's the trend that you're seeing there?
Yeah, well, we're seeing it's all on one side. We're seeing a whole bunch of lean cylinders. These cylinders are not making power, and that's why it got worse when we leaned the carburetor out. is they made even less power.
Right.
Well, the trend that I'm seeing is that it's every odd cylinder
Yeah.
that's lean.
Yeah, it's one side of the engine.
bank,
Yep.
which makes no sense because on the dual plane manifold, one level is feeding inner to and outer on the other side.
I know.
And the other level is doing the opposite. So
It can't do this, but it is.
Okay, so final answer on this thing is we suspect this manifold is not that good because of the leanness along one bank, but what we know is that the 4-hole spacer did nothing good on this combination.
No matter how much we tried and fought
Maybe
with it.
the open spacer is going to be the miracle worker here.
Let's hope. It's what we normally see, but who knows?
There's only one way to find out.
We're going to change to the open spacer. Final step. This is the dual plane manifold with the open spacer, and preemptively, Brule has already thrown 6 more jet sizes in the back and 3 in the front. Open spacers tend to make less signal on the carburetor, meaning that you have to put larger jets to achieve the same air-fuel ratio, and that's what Steve did before we even started. So the horsepower that we saw just now was 465.8 and the torque 478.2 with the open spacer. Let's look at it versus no spacer at all. So black is the open spacer and red is no spacer at all. So that is absolutely the right thing to do.
That's a lot of
Wow.
horsepower.
Yeah, I didn't expect that it was that big of a hit, but
I
man.
didn't either.
And that comes down to the cylinder distribution. It's not just that the spacer made that, it's that more cylinders are doing,
Their work.
They've come to the party. Reason why I think the cylinders are more evenly distributed is that 1-inch spacer is sharing more pulses side to side
You've got better
from the two
communication.
planes.
Yeah.
Better communication, exactly. And so the fuel's making a turn somehow and getting to wherever it needs to be in a better way.
But wait,
But wait,
I wonder if it's using more air too, or if it's taking in more air with the single spacer, because that's a big chunk of horsepower. You would
Yeah.
think there would be more air, or is it all efficiency and better distribution?
if cylinders are making more power, they're not necessarily drawing more
Not
air.
necessarily.
We're
but-
gonna
Right?
look.
Let's find out.
This is what we've.
Whoa!
No.
So it's all efficiency,
It's all
basically.
efficiency.
And that's what I mean. If they're making more power, if it's because they're richer instead of leaner, it's not going to draw more air. It's that it's using the fuel more efficiently.
Yeah.
So I think the last thing that we need to do is look at our best run with the single plane, which was with the 4-hole spacer, and our best run with the dual plane, which was with the open spacer. So black is the open spacer on the dual plane. Red is the 4-hole on the single plane. It's tipped right in the middle, pretty much like you would expect for dual plane versus single plane.
So now it's a question of what are you doing with the car?
Right, this is your drive around thing with the dual plane on it, and if you're drag racing this junk, then you want to go with the single plane and the 4-hole.
We're looking at this thing, and I'm going like, wow, that is really a decent combination now. We took kind of a... and polished
Mediocre.
it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
We did.
and those are pretty good changes considering the cost of a spacer is pretty minor when you consider cost of speed parts.
Yeah, it's like $15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And that's the difference. All right,
Okay,
I'm good.
me too.
Cool.
That's fine.
Out of here.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, I think we've seen why I generally didn't want to do this episode because all the performance is so dependent on the engine and the intake manifold, but I think I do have some general conclusions.
Well, yeah, I think we basically broke it down to the most likely scenario. So take it away, Freiberger.
The most likely scenario, I would say, is that a 1-inch open spacer almost always improves a dual plane intake manifold. Not always, but generally.
Agreed.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I would also say that a 4-hole spacer on the single plane intake manifold more rarely can help as far as distribution and performance.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's especially true if you've got a big single plane on an engine that doesn't really deserve it.
Case in point.
So are we on the same page so
Yeah.
far? I mean, not just from this test, but from the general things that we've all seen in the past. I think those are the trends that are kind of true.
You'll likely see those results, but don't count on it.
Right. And I think also we didn't bother testing some stuff that we knew wasn't going to work. There's 2-inch spacers as well in multiple designs. In fact, I think you can buy 3-inchers, can't you?
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, you hope so, because it looks cool. And that's an open. But then there's Dulcich's favorite and the most fun named spacer on Earth, the Super Sucker. This is actually more generically known as a tapered combo. See how it's 4-hole on the top and it tapers into an open at the bottom? That's supposed to be super trick, but honestly, we've messed around with stuff like this, and when you go to a 2-incher on an engine this mild, you don't really get any benefit out of it, which brings me back to you gotta try it every single time, and you gotta jet it every single time.
Yeah, and I kind of took something away that I wasn't expecting. To me, I always thought the volume was the big player, but what I found out is basically how the carburetor is interacting with the manifold when you stick that spacer in between. And that changes. We saw that in the fuel distribution.
On both tests?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why you were talking off camera about how guys will go to the drag strip and try a bunch of spacers and never touch the carburetor, and it just doesn't work that way. Honest truth, if you want to get the most out of your carburetor spacer, you need an oxygen sensor in every single hole so you can see what's going on. At minimum, you need 2 oxygen sensors in your headers. Do you agree?
Yeah, or a lot of drag testing will do the same thing.
Exactly. But generally, I would say your ultimate takeaway is if you've got a dual plane, try a 1-inch open spacer, and that's the end of the story. It's about the cheapest power you can get. As a matter of fact, Dulcich wants to go home and make one out of plywood.
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
And so, we hope to have more in-depth and factual information. Man, I love when we get to do head-to-head, brand-to-brand shootouts. This time, it's different intake manifolds for a Ford 351 Windsor. These things are great because we're gonna give you not only the power numbers, but also the price, so you can decide what works best for you. Now, I'm gonna tell you about the intake manifolds that we're gonna run today, and then I'll give you the basics of the engine that we're gonna run them on. These are all street-type intake manifolds for a Ford 351 Windsor. Now, I feel comfortable saying that the results that you're gonna see here will also match up for something like a 289 or a 302 that has a lower deck height than the 351. I think these manufacturers all use similar designs for both the low deck Windsor and for the 351. These are all dual planes. They're all for basic cruising lower RPM engines, and we haven't got into single planes at all. I've sort of ranked them in order here based on the price that we got them from summitracing.com. There is the basic Edelbrock Performer, which is the lowest rise, lowest performance intake manifold here, but I chose it because Ford guys often have hood clearance problems, like on Mustangs and things, and having that carb pad height just be like 3/4 of an inch lower can make a difference. So we're gonna find out if that one's worth it for you, even though it's probably gonna make the least power. That one is $309.95 at Summit, making it the most expensive manifold in the shootout. The next one up is also an Edelbrock. It's the Performer RPM, the taller, more high RPM oriented intake manifold. That one is $304.95 at Summit Racing. Moving down the line to cheaper stuff, we get the Wyand Stealth intake. That one is $262.99 at Summit. And finally, there is the Professional Products Typhoon, and that one is our cheapest unit at $255.95. So the engine we're gonna run all of these on is that. It is a stock 351 bottom end, cast pistons, about 9.5 to 1 compression, nothing special. The power comes from those Airflow Research 165cc cylinder heads, and it's got a hydraulic roller camshaft from Comp Cams. It is their XR282. Every time we run one of these intake manifolds, we'll be topping them with my favorite carburetor, the Holley XP, in a 750 double pumper. We've got MSD ignition, we'll have long tube open headers on it. This thing should make in the neighborhood of 430 pound-feet, 430 horsepower. It's what it typically runs. And that is like right at the crossover point and RPM range, because this runs just a tick over 6,000, where you gotta decide between a single plane and a dual plane. And that means we're really gonna be taxing the airflow of all of these. So the one that makes the most power is definitely the best intake manifold. We're gonna bolt up the Performer first, slam it onto the 351, and roll that junk into the dyno cell. Okay, bros, you ready for Ford intake manifold shootout?
I love Fords.
You love them?
I love them.
All right.
They're almost as good as a big block Chevy.
It'd be better if it was a 5.0.
Well, or a 429 Boss.
Or that, yeah. Yeah, so it's just a 351, and right now we got that Pucci Edelbrock Performer on there. Of the 4 intakes we're gonna test, I feel confident saying this one's gonna make the least average power.
I haven't even looked at the Pro Products. I'm familiar with the other 2 manifolds already.
They're usually
Is the
pretty
Pro
good.
Products a knockoff of Performer RPM air gap or something?
They're not air gaps, they're just RPMs.
Okay,
Yeah.
Performer RPM.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So we've seen this engine make 430 horsepower in a past configuration. It's different now. It's got a 165 head on it instead of the 195. So I don't know what's going to happen.
I guess we find out.
All right.
Okay.
Wow.
That's not bad.
Pretty good.
Wow, I look like a chump. I didn't think this intake would make 400 horsepower. I really didn't.
It's a nice curve, too. It made good torque. It was just good everywhere.
So this is way better than expected. Look at that.
Look how clean the curve is.
That's what I'm saying. It's a
And
beautiful
then
curve.
Look at that torque hump there at 3,900 RPM. It's nice.
So we just made 425.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM and 419.8 horsepower up at 6,100 RPM. I did
think
not
stretch is pretty good.
did not see that kind of power spread coming out of this intake manifold.
You know what I'm impressed with? That's a 2,100 RPM spread between peak torque and peak power.
Which is probably more a function of the camshaft and cylinder head.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the fact that that intake manifold could pull off 420 horse nearly,
And make it to 6,100.
I'll
Good
eat
stuff.
my words. I mean, I still think the others are going to be better, but that's mind-blowing
That's
that it was
pretty good.
capable to do that
Pretty
much.
good.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty
It's
happy.
going to be fun. We hadn't done any Ford intake stuff yet, and be good to see.
Yeah. All right, let's go pick another one to install.
Let's flip coins.
What's next?
You want to flip a coin for which one to install next?
Nah, you'll decide anyway.
I have selected the manifold that I believe will be the next worst in line.
Should we guess? Can we guess?
I will say that they're all pretty similar, but they are different. Guaranteed different. Which one do you think I picked?
Professional Pro products.
Professional products.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I will say all these next three manifolds are extremely similar,
Look really
but I
similar.
very carefully studied what's going on in the plenum and the transitions and the port mouths in here and the floor design, and I'm gonna guess this is the next in line.
Particular China rail gap on this intake manifold and cylinder head combination is about this tall. The China rail itself was fairly narrow, so what we're having to do is I'm kind of patching one together, kind of building a wall. I put some silicone down, then patched a cork in, then I'll put silicone on top of that to build it up. I've done this before, and it sticks and holds and does a great job.
So we've gone with the cork and the sauce. Extreme measures here on Engine Masters.
Okie doke, I've got the manifold here. This is the Pro Products. We're gonna go in the control room and see what it does.
Right, we got that Pro Products on there. I think it's going to be better than the Performer, but not as good as the stuff we're testing later in the day. But I've already been proven wrong once, so why do I keep
You know,
speaking?
this intake manifold thing is always surprising. It's hard to just look at something and know what's better. But
Oh, Dulcich
it looks
can.
decent. Well, but that's Steve Dulcich.
Right.
You know, we're mere humans.
Oh, you guys,
You're the all-knowing engine
I
master.
really appreciate that, but I find it very hard to pick out on this particular test because the manifolds
Yeah.
are so similar in configuration.
But if you really dig deep in that plenum, there's some differences. All right, let's fire it up and find out.
Okay.
Less chatter, more action.
Wow.
Here's our results with the Pro Products Power Plus. It made 431 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM, and then it tickled another 100 RPM higher than the Performer intake, making 435.7 horsepowers at 6,200 RPM. But the real tale is going to be when we overlay these curves with the ones from the prior intake manifold, the Performer.
Wow.
There you go. That's the Performer in red versus the Pro Products manifold in black. You can see it's a huge difference.
So far, you're right.
So far.
Well, that may be hard to beat, actually.
Yeah,
that
that's
Pro
pretty good.
Products is it's an animal. Look at that number, 435.7.
And you know, I always worry on this show that people look at that graph that shows the plus number peak to peak, and they don't get the whole story of how much more power is really there throughout the curve.
Yeah, it started diverging right here, and I think that's an airflow demand, and this manifold has the ability to do that, and the other one was a smaller volume-wise manifold and can't flow as much, but then the curves diverge, and gosh, that's 15 horsepower difference. And it didn't lose anything at 3,000.
Not at all.
So it's just a win-win-win.
Stout. Okay,
Stout.
we won't know how good it is, though, until we try the next one.
Unknown manifold.
I will surprise you once again with which manifold I'm going to choose.
What that really means, Steve, is go change this manifold, get it ready while he brings the
decides
other one
which
in.
one to get, right?
Well, now that you mention it, that is sort of a collateral effect of me having to pick.
The benefits of being the picker.
Yeah. All right, let's tear it apart.
Okay.
Manifold number 3 coming next. Okay, guys, I'm surprising you with my next choice.
It's a 50-50 chance.
It is
It's either the Edelbrock or the Wyand, and I'm going to say the Wyand.
the Edelbrock RPM. Now, by power of deductive reasoning, you would realize this means I think the Wyand might make a little more power. Which is weird, because this is the standard.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah,
I get to do the drop Freiberger?
you do.
Man, I've graduated.
Our third intake manifold here is the one that we normally consider the best overall for a street engine under 6,500 RPM. It's the Edelbrock Performer RPM dual plane. And the reason why I told those guys it was a surprise that I would pick this one is normally we would run it last, expecting it to make the most power, and it might. But I was looking at this versus the Wyand, and I don't know, I just had a hint of an inclination that the Wyand might make a speck more power, so we're gonna run the Edelbrock as the third intake. All right, this is the gold standard, the Edelbrock RPM.
It's the one everybody uses.
It's one I always recommend.
Yeah. But looking at these other two manifolds, I think it's got some competition here.
It does.
I'm just kind of going to have to reserve judgment until I see what we've got from the dyno.
He's smart. Okay.
Well, thank you,
I'm
Robert.
itching. I'm itching.
We're there. We're ready to run.
Run it.
It's good.
It's good. Is it better enough? Okay, well, here's the peak power numbers with the Edelbrock RPM. 435.7 pound-feet of torque at 4,100 RPM, and up top 435.2 horsepower at 6,200. But what we gotta know is how it compares to that last Pro Products manifold. So we're gonna overlay the two here.
That's what I was seeing.
Interesting.
Wow.
So the black lines here are the Edelbrock Performer RPM. Red lines are the Pro Products intake manifold. Look at all of that meat in the torque curve right there with the Edelbrock.
Guys pay a lot of money for that. I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. That's
Kind of what I
big.
was seeing as the RPM went by is this torque in here, and then the peaks look the same.
Yeah, and up top, the horsepower is negligible. Actually, the Pro Products is just a little higher after peak, but insignificant. Wow, that's interesting. So this is the difference in $50 and American-made Edelbrock versus Chinese Pro Products.
That's a $50 difference?
I'd spend the $50.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that. That's a lot of meat in the torque curve right there.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
That's why it's the gold standard, right?
I guess so. So I feel comfortable saying that the RPM wins that contest, and you'd probably notice it, maybe not just driving around the car, but at the drag strip. I think that's worth a little.
Yeah, it's a bunch.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't give it away even just knowing.
Right.
I mean, how do you give away
Right.
15 for $50?
Yeah, you can't. Now the heat is on me, though, because I claimed that the Wyand might be just a skosh better. Can I define skosh?
Yes.
Can I go down to like half a number?
Oh, no.
Is that okay?
I had my $5 bill out, so I don't know.
So interesting. Next up, we have to go install the Wyand. I don't know what the fancy name is for the Wyand.
You bought it.
I know. It's
Stealth.
Wyand.
Is it a
stealth? Is it a stealth?
I think.
All right, we're moving on to the Wyand intake now.
Swap them out.
Now it's just parts.
Well, on the dyno, we often get away with reusing intake gaskets over and over and over, but we've hit our limit. So for our final manifold change here, we're actually installing new ones. I need the Wyand to work so that I look like the airflow soothsayer.
The manifold whisperer.
Exactly.
That's a worthy goal, Freiberger. We're about to find out whether or not it's true.
Right, here we go with the Wyand stealth intake that I'm hoping makes a tiny bit more power because I believe it's got a little bit bigger runner size and a little bit more plenum volume.
Well, I wish you luck with it, Freiberger. I mean, I really
I've got no idea.
I want this win on your ticket here.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Freiberger.
All he cares about is the peak power number.
It looked like
That's the only reason you're happy, huh?
Right, that's the only reason. Let's have a look. All right, our Wyand stealth intake manifold. Here's our peak numbers: 426.5 pound-feet of torque at 4,100 RPM, and up top 436.7 horsepower at 6,100 RPM, thereby making me look like the Nostradamus of intake manifolds,
Wow,
at least as far as peak horsepower goes.
how did you predict that, Freiberger? It's uncanny. Wow.
Hard to say, but let's look at the overlay because I have a feeling that the
I don't
torque
think the torque is quite
not
as good.
quite where I wanted it to be. Whoa, there you go.
Whoa. Oh my
So
goodness.
the Wyand is the black line and the Edelbrock is the red line. So even though the Wyand tickled a little bit more horsepower up at the top,
One.
that volume I was talking about in the runners and the plenum absolutely destroyed the torque down here. So you gotta say the overall winner is our old standard, the Edelbrock Performer RPM.
By a long shot. Look
By
at the
a long
torque
shot.
difference.
There's as much as 15 here.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at 415 versus 432, 17.
Yeah.
Like 434,
Now that's
419. Yeah.
That's massive.
Well, you know what
Yeah.
that is? That's the difference between a power curve and a magazine number, basically.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, look at that.
I mean, it tickled up maybe 2 horsepower, which really, even though it makes me win, it doesn't matter whatsoever when you look at this.
If we looked at the average numbers, it'd be a whole different
It'd
story.
be hideous.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's the question. If this was a 408 and had a slightly bigger cam, would the Wyand be the right thing to run? No?
I think
Still?
it does the same thing.
Think it does the same thing?
yeah.
I think it may
Yeah.
just do everything, you know,
Shove it
a
up and
little
down.
earlier.
Yep.
But I think the characteristics would be the same.
Well, the thing I feel good about is that we always say the Edelbrock Performer RPM is the manifold to choose, and you don't go wrong, and I think this backs that up.
You know, I don't know what sort of math they use, but they did it right on Fords and Mopars and Chevys and big blocks and small blocks, and it's just
Everything.
amazing, really, how universal that thing is.
So next up, I think we need to look at how the Wyand did compared to the Pro products intake. Oh, snap.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Pro products is better than the Stealth, below 4,000 RPM and identical up top. Interesting. I wonder if that has to do with the larger plenum size and runner size that I was observing in the Wyand.
Yeah, you'd think that, but then wouldn't you also think that it might carry a little bit more at the top if it's,
There you
if it's a
have it,
volume
yeah.
situation?
Yeah, it's
so.
just not
yeah.
as good at the bottom and pretty close from the mid-range on up.
Interesting. Here's the last thing I want to do. Let's compare the Performer RPM versus the Performer, our best and our worst.
Okay.
Let's have a look. Look at that. Mm-hmm. That explains a lot. Back down here where there isn't that much airflow demand, they're much closer and they get further and further apart as they climb. So the black lines here are the Performer RPM and the red line is the regular Performer. So if you are a Ford guy looking for a lot of hood clearance and you need that Performer, you now know exactly what you're giving up. And here's something you guys don't know. You know what the most expensive manifold is that we tested here?
The Performer.
The Performer at 309.95 at Summit Racing, and the RPM is 304.95.
Well, it's $4.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You talked about a bigger motor, and I said that I thought they would do kind of the same thing. If it were a 289 cubic inch engine with these manifolds on it, do you think that we're going to see that sort of difference when there's not the same air demand? I think the
narrow
Performer
up.
does better.
Yeah, it'll narrow up.
You think it does better?
I think it tightens up the difference.
It tightens up the difference.
Yeah.
For sure. But here's the other thing I've always said is no matter how lame your engine is, you can't really go wrong with the RPM.
No.
You and I tested one a long time ago on a stock Chevy 305 that made like 280 horsepower, and actually the RPM was the same as their Performer. It just made no difference.
Okay.
Which is why I think if you're going to spend the money, you might as well get the better one, and it looks cooler anyway.
Yeah, it does look cool.
What's it all about, right?
Well, good stuff.
Yeah, that was a really good test. I love doing these head-to-head shootouts, and I think it's interesting that the Performer RPM won when we did the Chevy, and it did it again on the 351 Ford.
The thing I like about this is it's engine specific. The guy with a 351 gets to see which manifold he wants to choose. It's not theory, it's not kind of guessing at things. I mean, it's A/B testing.
It's exactamundo. Cool. Thanks,
Done.
Brulio.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. See you
All right,
next time.
Steve-O.
Just the facts, Dulcich.
Okay.
The
what?
data bears it out. The Edelbrock Performer RPM is the clear winner. The data proves it.
Well, yeah, it's the old standard, and it's kind of nice to see it win. But for me, there's a whole nother takeaway, and that's you've got 4 intake manifolds that virtually to the untrained eye look identical. But there's 16 horsepower difference top to bottom, which is a lot.
Huge, yeah, all through the curve.
So you can't just pick your favorite logo and just slap it on, right?
Well, you can, apparently, if it's Edelbrock.
Well, I guess you're right.
The thing I really like about episodes like this is I think there's a lot of outlets that are scared of doing the brand-to-brand shootout, and we just walk full face right into it.
Oh, yeah, no fear.
No fear. That's what you get every time on Engine Masters.
I don't know what the beef is here, but
I have not been this pumped up for an episode of Engine Masters in a long time because we are leaving nothing on the table. We are going to put some stank on this thing. Here's how it's going to go. We are going to test this engine naturally aspirated on gasoline, then with this 871 supercharger at a couple different boost levels on gas. Then we're going to put nitrous oxide on top of that. Then we're going to switch it to E85 fuel and see what kind of power gains that gives us. And then we are going to nitrous it on E85. Not playing around this time. Let me tell you about the combination here because this is also personal to me. This long block is a 555 cubic inch big block Chevy, and I ran this at Bonneville Salt Flats in 2007 and did something I don't think anybody's ever done. We set 5 records in 5 days with 4 different drivers. And so this engine has a lot of legacy for me. The bottom end, it's a stout block, it's a forged crank, it's billet rods, it's CP pistons. The bummer about it is it's only 8.3 to 1 compression. These days, if you're building for boost and nitrous, you would go ahead and run, 10.5 to 1, 11 to 1, something like that. But way back when we built it, 8.3 was the number. So we are sacrificing a little power. The heads on top of this thing are an Airflow Research or AFR 357 Magnum. The camshaft is another no fooling around unit. The duration at 50 thousandths is 281 and 290 on this thing, and it's got like 800 lift. But now we get into the meat of it. The Blower Shop 871 Roots Supercharger. If you're not keyed into this, the Blower Shop are the guys to see these days for street or race superchargers. This is the same thing that Mike Finnegan, who's my co-host on the Roadkill show, he's got this on his Hemi in the Blasphemy 55 Chevy that won Drag Week and that made 1,100 horsepower to the tires doing it and also ran 850s. Same exact supercharger, except for he's got EFI nozzles in the side of it. This thing is a high helix deal, hardened rotors, Teflon stripped, blueprinted to the nth degree, ported at the bottom to improve the flow out of it. This is as good as a regular guy 871 supercharger gets these days. Now, up top, this is an NOS nitrous system. We did not custom make this. I can't bend lines like this. You can buy this straight out of the box. It is like a 16 nozzle fogger for the top of a Roots style supercharger, and we are gonna make good use of that. On the top, 2 Dominators. There's no 4150 carburetors around here. Not when you got 1,050 CFM each. We're gonna start off with Holley's gasoline Dominator, and as we progress, you're gonna see us add QFT E85 carburetors. Now, we've already tested this naturally aspirated, and so we're gonna show you that. We're gonna roll it in, and our very first dyno test on camera is gonna be with the blower, on gasoline, no nitrous, with sort of mediocre boost. Watch what happens here. This is gonna be legit greatness. First of all, I think we should have the pandemic every day because this is a lot more comfortable than cramming in the little dyno room.
I agree.
It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it is kind of.
Yeah, with the screens and everything. I guess what's going to happen is they're going to show us the engine here so that when it's blowing up, I can scream at you. And then when we come back to do data, we're going to swap them so that he can actually read the screen from there.
I'd
I've
rather
got my
see him wear his
glasses.
glasses.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the specs are pretty
Man,
good.
I can see like an owl now.
Second of all, I'm more excited about this than anything we've done in a long time. I've been
big.
waiting for this.
It's big.
It's big. This supercharger is like a new level of 871 for me, and the 555. I mean, we're going to be making 4-digit power all day long.
Oh yeah, and you gotta love the Dommies with those secret little pipes underneath.
Oh yeah, nitrous. Now this thing is going to be beef. So what we're going to do first is run the thing in its base configuration with the supercharger. What's the overdrive on it?
12.5%.
12.5% over. It's making about 9.5 PSI. It'll make over 1,000 horsepower. And then after that, we'll start to add real horsepower to it. Ready to fire it up?
I am.
All right, baseline, here we go.
Oh, it's gonna be good, Freiberger. You got it.
I'm excited with that. What, 1,050? Let's
Yeah.
call it up. It's making 1,052.3 horsepower at 7,200 RPM. Our torque peak is going to be 882 right at the hit of 5,000 RPM. Since we're talking about power, let's look at this curve versus naturally aspirated.
You can read all that
Boom.
stuff.
Okay, so I had to call up this comparison. When I first took this engine out of mothballs, I had Brule pre-run it with a single 4-barrel carburetor, naturally aspirated, just to make sure that it was healthy. It made 768 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, and now it's making 1,052 at 7,200 RPM. So you can see the effects of the supercharger. This is comparatively low boost. This is half of what Finnegan runs in his Hemi. 1/2 the boost. And we're still making 1,052.
I think we're doing
on
good
this
with
thing.
half the boost.
Yeah, not bad.
You look at the air-fuel ratio numbers, and they're flat like fuel injection. It varies 1/10 during the whole pull.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Good carburetors.
Yep.
That's a good base.
One thing I would be curious to note is the difference in intake air temperature at one boost level to another. Because one of the things I wonder is once we get into the E85 in particular, does it actually allow you to run more boost because it's a cooler charge? Like it's not just power because it's cooler, but also power because you can run more boost safely.
Well, I would think so, because you have a lower temperature, you're going to have more detonation resistance at that lower temperature, so you can run more boost, because ultimately it's total cylinder pressure that's going to determine
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Maybe we should run 2 boost levels here. We got Rocket Brand 118 in it, right?
We do.
Do we have something that is gonna make, 14 instead of 9.5?
I don't know. We got some pulleys over there. I can go look.
We're gonna go do pulley math. Be right back. BRB. Let me find the pulleys. Here's what we're doing. Our baseline pulley drive ratio was a 54 pulley on the bottom and a 48 on the top. That's the number of teeth on the pulley. You divide that out, you end up with 12.5% overdriven, meaning the supercharger is turning 12.5% more RPM than the engine itself. We're gonna change it up with a larger crankshaft pulley. This is a 57, which means it's going to what, 19% overdrive, a little bit more than 19%?
18.
So that's gonna increase the boost. Now, of course, this is purely scientific because what I'm trying to see is how much the manifold air temperature increases with an increase in boost. And of course, I want to make more power. So we're going to find out what that does. This isn't full-on party pulley mode, but it's at least like happy hour mode, or maybe backyard barbecue mode. It should be good. Okay, now Bruleo is warming it up. And to be accurate, I said in there it was 19% overdrive. It's 18.75. Well, it made 908.2 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM, and our biggest horsepower was 1,065.9 at 7,200 RPM. Not as good as I had hoped. What was the gain in boost? We went from 9.9 to 11.7. So not a giant change, but I'm guessing it heated up the air quite a bit.
Yeah, and this is probably not unlike what we've seen so many other times with gasoline, as you get to that point where it's just the per pound of boost, the first 5 or 6 is 40 or 50 horsepower per pound, and the last couple is what, 10 or 12? It wasn't a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it went from 1053 to 1060 something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not worth it. So we're at the point of no return on gasoline where it's heating up the air, which is a greater detriment than the addition to boost. Plus, it brings risk of detonation and melting electrodes.
Well, that's
See, we've got air inlet temperature over 215 degrees. I mean,
that's the thing about a Roots blower. It's got that limitation compared to some other forms of supercharging.
Yeah.
It adds more heat when you really start pumping up the blower speed.
We gained 20 degrees Fahrenheit in the manifold. The new manifold temperature with the bigger boost is 218 Fahrenheit as opposed to 198. So that's a solid 20 up.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I guess we're moving on from here to nitrous.
Nitros.
Oh, this is what I've been waiting for.
I know, me too.
It's gonna be great.
It's not your motor.
I know.
It's okay, it won't be yours either.
So Steve-O, there's a whole bunch of tubing here. This is like a fogger style system. And so, I mean, how's this jetted up? Tell me the rundown here.
You got it. It's exactly like a fogger system. In fact, the jetting that we have in it, I took right off of Holley's website for fogger jetting. So what we have in it now is Holley claims that it's 175 horsepower jet. We have 8 number 22 nitrous jets in it.
Right.
For gasoline, we have an 18,000s fuel jet in it.
So, I mean, what's the difference between running that kind of a setup or running just a regular plate system under each carburetor?
This looks way more awesome.
Yeah, I guess that's reason enough. So, hopefully it works as good as it looks.
It will.
I think we're ready to go, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be the nitrous pull. We've got the same pulleys on the thing, same tune-up. He's going to hit it at 5,000 RPM and sweep it on up to 72. I hope it makes 1,300 horsepower.
I can't wait to see it.
So our peak torque number on nitrous oxide is actually 1,053.7 at 6,300 RPM. And the peak horsepower is 1,269.4 at 6,900 RPM. Okay, now that we've looked at our power, which is obviously huge, although it didn't hit the 1,300 number I was hoping for, let's have a look at the manifold air temperature. Interesting.
No significant change there.
It was 218 at peak, and now it's 214 at peak. Here's something that I find really strange. I'm hoping that the brilliance of Brulé gives me some expert tutelage on why.
Hey, how about me?
I expected the manifold air temperature to drop way low on the nitrous oxide. It really didn't. We saw a peak temperature of 218 with no nitrous and 214 here with the nitrous.
I think it's a combination of two things. I don't think it's cooling as much at this power level because there's more compression, because it's more boost.
Right.
I don't think it cools as well, and I think that it's a probe issue as well.
Okay. Let's look at what happened to boost. So our peak boost is the same at 11.7, but it did show right when you hit it at peak torque, the boost went up. So the red line is the boost curve with no nitrous. The black line is the boost curve with nitrous. So obviously, as soon as he hits the button and it reaches peak torque, right here at 6,300, or I guess that's 65, the boost goes up, but then it drops back down. But since it's making more power, it's consuming more air and more nitrous and more fuel. So since the pulley ratio is the same and the RPM is the same, why doesn't it show more boost?
I'm going to throw it at the sensor. I'm going to say that closed-end sensor isn't really quick enough to see the drop. Also, the higher output of the blower, the more pulley we put in it, the percentage of nitrous becomes smaller, so it makes less of a difference. If we had this at 3 pounds of boost, I think it would show even more cooling because the rate of temperature versus nitrous is different.
I thought that all of that stuff taking up space in the manifold would see the boost rise. And clearly I'm wrong. I'm just trying to discover why you guys think I'm wrong.
The temperature.
The temperature. Oh, which is also adds
dense,
up to your
yes.
probe not actually
Yes.
reading. Because if the
It's got
temperature in the
colder,
manifold
takes
drops
up
that
less
much,
space.
it takes up less space. Bing! Good
Brule
pull,
just-
Brule.
Yeah.
Good pull.
Every
He's
once in a
sitting
while.
there like, uh-oh, what affects pressure? Volume? Ooh, heat.
That is exactly what was going on.
That was pretty good. Good pull. That actually explains it. Okay, moving on to E85. Now we're doing our changeover to E85, which really only means pouring different gasoline in the tank and changing the carburetors. These are QFT 4500 series carburetors, similar to the Holley Dominator. They both flow 1050 CFM, but the QFT is designed specifically for E85. So once we get this changed over, we're gonna be making big power. Now we've changed the fuel to E85. Just to explain to you what that is and why we would be doing this. E85 is a gasoline you can buy at most pumps. It's not really available around here. You don't have it up in your place, do you?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
not
really?
really gasoline. It's like 15% gasoline and the rest is ethanol alcohol. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Theoretically, I think in California you'll find it's usually 75%, even though it's advertised at 85%. It's a corn-based alcohol. And the reason that we would be using it on the supercharged application is that it should pull more heat out of the air and make more power, especially in a boosted application. Remember in a prior episode of Engine Masters, we tried E85 on a naturally aspirated deal and it was kind of no great shakes.
NA stuff, that's not unusual to kind of see nothing, maybe some torque, but no real peak horsepower stuff. I think on the blower stuff, we're going to see more of a
big
difference.
deal.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna fire it up now and find out what kind of power difference we might see based on the fact that it's gonna pull more heat out of the air. So we're gonna be looking at that manifold air temperature to drop and the power to go up. Warm it up, Brule.
All right, here we go.
Thanks. We'll sit here and watch from a social distance. So our new peak power numbers are torque at 5,000 RPM, 970 pound-feet, and our peak horsepower is gonna be 1,138.7 at 6,800 RPM. So we picked up 72 horsepower just by changing the fuel. Let's find out why. First of all, manifold temperatures.
Yeah, let's see here.
Wow.
So the manifold air temperature that we had just on gasoline at this same boost configuration on the blower was 218 degrees. Now 148 degrees. That's a massive difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah. So now we're really seeing it. So what did it do to boost though? If it cooled it off that much, did we reduce our boost? Yes, we did.
Less boost,
wow.
more power.
Less boost, more power because it's a colder manifold air temperature.
Denser. There's more air to burn.
Yeah. And so exactly how much less? We did have 11.7 PSI and it is now 10.5. So it's got a full 1.1 PSI less boost, which is significant. All right, let's look at the graph of actually the difference between the gasoline and the
You
E85.
know how much I love graphs.
Yeah, because it's just so visual. This.
Wow.
Wow. Everywhere in the curve, no downside, 100% win.
Wow. That is definitely worth it. And it's like so much cheaper than race gas.
That too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean,
Yep.
That's
I
all
remember
win.
when we did this naturally aspirated, my conclusion was, but with boost, yes.
Yeah.
Big difference, yeah.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Man, so that's pretty good. So E85 is awesome. You know what's awesomer?
E85 with nitrous. Oh.
Party brulee.
You party at yours.
Good answer, Steve. All right, last pulley swap. Unbeknownst to Brule, we're going from 18.75 overdrive to 23.4. Brule's shaking his head.
Well, Steve, you're smiling.
It was lame.
You know, at some point you have to go, yeah, that was pretty good. You know, 1,160 horsepower or something, and we haven't even got to the nitrous yet.
I'm
I
disappointed.
like it.
No, I mean, we have to look at the numbers before we can talk about the numbers.
I get a preview, though. That's the difference.
Yeah, I know. So I'm humming because it looks like we only picked up like 26 horsepower. We made 1,165.1 horsepower at 6,800 RPM, and the torque was 990.5 at 5,000. And I know it would seem absurd to be disappointed by that, but it looks like we picked up 1 full pound of boost with the pulley swap and only picked up 26 horsepower.
When we go back to the gas stuff, though, that was pretty similar, too, towards the end of the curve. When we were up in that 11 or 12 pounds of boost area, it was kind of the same thing.
Less sensitive. I just thought the E85 would improve that situation. What was our manifold temp? 158, so it came up 10 degrees than with the other pulley set, which is not bad.
Yeah, you're just up against the law of diminishing returns here as far as blower speed, temperature, and stuff like that.
Size, you know, there's just a lot going on there.
So this motor's only 8.3 to 1 compression. If it was 10.5 to 1, would it actually indicate more boost?
I don't think so. Honestly, I got to think about that. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
The question, though, is based around the fact that I think we've shown today that boost it's a concept. In other words, when people walk around, it's like, you know, how much boost are you running? 12. Oh, well then blah, blah, blah. Well, but it depends so much on manifold air temperature and the engine displacement and this, that, and the other.
I can't tell you some of the frustration I go through, you know, with fuel injection guys in particular, mechanical fuel injection guys. And these are tuners, and they say, well, how much boost does it make? And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's how much power does it make?
Yeah.
That's what we have to do with the fuel system. And everyone relates to this boost thing. And we both know, or all of us know, that it's a restriction.
Airflow is the biggest consideration here because if you put that supercharger, your turbo, or whatever is generating the boost up against a huge restriction, you're going to have sky-high boost, but you're not going to have any power.
Yeah.
For example, we could put a much smaller camshaft in this, like a 230 at 50 camshaft.
And make more boost.
And make more boost, and a lot less power.
Right.
So
boost is just a concept. As we proved in our prior test when we put the E85 in and made less boost, made more power, there's just more to it. But nevertheless, I'm let down by gaining only 1 pound of boost and only making 26 horsepower. So, as if 1,165 horsepower isn't good enough, we're gonna go ahead and hook up the nitrous. Ready?
Oh, yeah. Impressive.
See the afterburner?
Oh, it turned into a jet engine.
Yeah. Here we go. Oh, it didn't even make an extra 200 horsepower, almost 1,359 horsepower, all the way up at 7,100 RPM. And the max torque that we saw on the nitrous this time was 1,116 pound-feet at 6,300
I saw
RPM.
that when I activated the nitrous, and I went, come on, absorber, hang in there, hang in there.
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was going to make 1365, exactly 200 horsepower, and it fell, what, 6 shy of that, but still.
Well, in all fairness, the water temperature was about 10 higher, and I just couldn't get it down lower as the temperature in the day gets warmer.
Make me feel better.
Well-
Let's look at it on the graph.
That always makes you feel better.
Always makes you feel better. 1359.4, and what was it, 7,100 RPM?
Yeah, but I mean, it activated there and then had a dip. I think it's because it was a bit rich in there, and then it came back. I'd like to look at the air-fuel ratio curve.
Nice. Yeah, started 11.5, went hair lean to 12.4, like right when you hit the button, and then 11.3 up top. Rich, but fine. Yeah, and how about the manifold temperature? 150 degrees.
That's fine.
Same as
Yeah.
we saw before. And once again, not colder with the nitrous, which maybe it's the probe.
Volume of nitrous, yeah. some of the
Volume of
things we
nitrous,
talked
whatever.
About. What about boost? Did that change?
And the boost came up to 12.3 at peak.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what did we actually learn? I
when you
was
take a
just
really-
going for big power,
I was
but
going to say what we learned is when you take a really cool blower motor and put smaller pulleys on it and nitrous, you can make 1,350 horsepower.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually, that's a lot of power.
Yeah, it's good power.
Yeah, that's really, really stout. But what we learned, I'm going to say, is those limits of manifold temperature and where you can go with the blower and the pulleys and stuff like that.
I think part of it too is what we learned is blower size. There are some limitations. You get to that point. What I frequently see, like in the street style, non-stripped 871s, man, you get to 950, 980, and they're just, you
Yeah,
can
you're
pull in
done.
until you're blue in the face, and it's just not going to make any more power. It'll
Yeah.
probably make less because you're making the air hotter. They're just done. So quality
Yeah.
of blower and size has a lot to do with power potential.
Well, this is making 200 more horsepower than your average shelf blower that you're seeing. And some of those are actually not even just turd blowers, they're just lower end
Yeah,
blowers.
yeah.
This thing's about the highest end 871 you can get, and it's making bench racing 200 more horsepower.
So again, go to a 10, 12, 14.
Yeah.
You know, they just get better and more power potential.
I have one last question. Do you have more nitrous jets?
Sure.
Really?
Are you kidding? I love the nitrous. I have all
Really?
the jets.
Oh,
So
boy.
could we hit it with another
100?
140 horsepower
Sure.
and make 1,500?
If you want.
We could?
I'll let you.
Really?
Really? Wow, he is
I think
completely
we should.
fearless when
I
it
think
comes to your engine.
We should have 1,500 horsepower.
Let's go for it.
I think we need 1,500.
Oh, man,
Here we
looks
go.
like your buddy's egging you
Oh,
on.
man, I had
Yeah.
no idea it was going to come to this. Yes! Yes!
Look at the happiness level, Freiburger.
This is the hold my beer moment. We have got a 350 shot tune-up on the nitrous system. So we went from 175, which actually made 200 horsepower,
Yeah.
to 350, which could actually make 400 extra horsepower. So we're looking at making in excess of 1,500 horsepower if everything goes right.
Man, you've got more guts than I do, Freiburger. Seriously. You
Going for the glory.
Double the nitrous.
Relay, that was your most reckless moment I've ever witnessed out of you. It was awesome.
I loved it. I loved it.
Did you?
Yeah.
You're all smiles too.
Absolutely.
I know. I saw 1,500 go by, but let's look at the actual data.
Okay, let's see.
The
We're good.
Iceman.
Oh,
05.
just barely. It made 1505.3 at 7,200 RPM, and it was probably on its way up.
Yeah,
and then
probably
you
a little
chickened
bit.
out. Torque-wise, it made 1233.7 at 6,300 RPM. That's absurd.
I could trim the tune up a little bit, maybe pick up a few more, but
I think we're
I'm
done.
happy where we're
No,
good.
we're done. I'm comfortable now.
Well, you're so brave 10 minutes ago.
No, it lived though.
Yeah,
So
it did
now
live.
I'm giving it a reprieve. 1,500 horsepower.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, so it basically picked up 150. What was the jets that you put in it?
3642.
Let's look at the air-fuel ratio. Oh, Brulio nailed it.
It's a little rich. Like
It's
I
a
said,
little
I could trim it a
Yeah.
touch there, drop the fuel pressure probably, maybe go back 2 thousandths in fuel, but
Yeah, it was 11
close.
to 1 at peak
Yeah, it doesn't need to be.
horsepower. It could be leaner than that by, a point, honestly.
Yeah.
But we don't need to go hunting for another 10 or 15. 1505.
This is the most fun we've had in a while.
It is.
Yeah.
Can we look at the curve?
We can.
Is it a curve or is it a table?
Table.
It's a table. Nice tune-up. Do you want to compare it to the prior nitrous shot or no
Sure.
nitrous? Yeah,
Well,
let's look at the prior
nitrous.
nitrous shot.
Ba-boom.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
As easy as a jet change. Look at that. And now throw on there the so-called NA, the blown but with no nitrous on E85.
Which one? That's going to be a final. Oh,
Ah,
weak.
Man,
Weak.
You can't have that garbage. Yeah. Yeah, when your junk only makes 1165, you're nobody. You got to go to the 1500. Oh, man. I'm
was
happy.
awesome, Freiberger.
That was good.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was hoping for. Give me the COVID smack.
That is a 350 horsepower jet off of NOS's chart.
And it made?
And it made
350 horsepower. Look at that. And table flat.
Pretty good stuff here. I'm really liking that.
That is awesome. All right. This is like my favorite episode ever.
Me too.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I like
Cool.
Good stuff.
Look how excited you are. You're like a little kid.
All right, Steve, I'm just going to stand here and gloat as you heap me with praise.
Freiberger, you just made 1,505 horsepower. And I'm super proud of you, bro. Nice work.
Thanks, man. I bet
Yeah.
you did not think that either me or Brule would be willing to go there.
No, as a matter of fact, when we were in that 1,300 range, I thought we were walking away.
Oh, I know, but I could see the disappointment in your eyes.
I know, and then confidently, with no holding back whatsoever, you
Yeah.
looked Brule straight in the eye and said, I think we're gonna step up to 350 horsepower worth of nitrous. And he didn't flinch. What was going on? It was like opposite day.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
The thing is, I know that there's a lot of guys looking at this and they're going, but my junkyard LS with a turbo makes 1,500 horsepower, and it might. But then you don't have this. Look at the big block with blower and nitrous.
Oh, it definitely has presence.
Nothing can top the visual appeal. Gloating aside, I'll gloat more. Here's the thing that's actually fantastic is the versatility of this to me, because on 6 pounds of boost on gasoline and no nitrous, you can have 900 horsepower on 91 octane and drive this thing anywhere, anytime.
With complete reliability.
Except for maybe a little valve train distress. It's got a lot of cam in it.
Yeah.
But then you just add a little bit of pulley and some race gas and you're making 1,000. And run it on E85 and you're making nearly 1,200. Throw some nitrous on it on gas, you're making 1,300. Throw some nitrous on it, even more on E85, you're making 1,500. You can just completely stab this in a race car, and then as your terror diminishes, step to the next level. And then when the terror diminishes, keep on going. That's what's great about this thing.
Oh, yeah. For that day where you just have to have your 1,505 horsepower.
Man, I just
You're
don't
all
want
set,
the episode
Freiberger.
to end, man. This is just the greatest thing ever. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of Engine Masters. And man, I'm just totally thrilled to death with my old Bonneville short block. And huge thanks to the guys at Blower Shop and NOS, because greatness.
I agree.
Me and the Steves love testing engines, and in particular, we love testing camshafts because there's always something to learn. And this time we're going to address one of the most complicated things about camshaft profiles, and it is lobe separation angle or lobe displacement angle, also called LSA or LDA. First, let me tell you what that's all about, and we'll do it staring at this 440 Mopar camshaft by Comp Cams right here. So the forwardmost lobe on the cam is the exhaust port on this Mopar. It's opening and closing the exhaust valve. The third one back is the intake lobe for opening and closing the intake valve. Look at them and you can see that there is an angle. So if you draw an imaginary center line between the peak lift of both of these lobes, you can see that there is an angle between the two. When you have a tighter lobe separation angle of 106 degrees, the exhaust events all happen later. The intake events all happen sooner. The opposite is true when you spread it out to a wide lobe separation angle. At that point, all of the exhaust intake and closing events happen earlier, and all of the intake happens later. So there's a lot of voodoo that has to do with this. And as a matter of fact, if you have a dual overhead cam engine where you've got one stick that's got the intake lobes and one of them that's got the exhaust, you can move that stuff all over the place independent of each other. We're gonna keep it very simple for this test. We're gonna run 3 different lobe displacement angles: 106 degrees, 112 degrees, and 118 degrees. So what we've got there is 106 is tighter. It's closed up like that. 118 is really wide. It's spread open like that. And so we got comp cams to make us 3 separate camshafts that are identical except for the lobe separation angle. They're all mechanical rollers. They all have a duration at 50 of 264 on the intake, 268 on the exhaust. The lift is 660 and 330. That lobe separation angle again is 106, then 112, then 118. So let me talk a little bit about what you can kind of expect from this, which you might not see on the dyno, and that is idle quality. When you take that lobe separation angle and tighten it up, it makes for a lot of valve overlap, which is the period of time that both the intake and the exhaust valve are open at the same time across the end of the exhaust stroke and into the intake stroke. That's what gives a camshaft that really choppy idle. It makes it sound gnarly, but it also reduces idle vacuum and can make drivability difficult. So that is the cost of the tight lobe separation angle. However, it tends to make much beefier mid-range torque. When you widen out that lobe separation angle, you smooth the idle. You get greater vacuum, and that's the reason you see it in a lot of VFI applications. And the other thing that you do with that wide lobe sep is it tends to favor the much higher end of the RPM curve for the camshaft at the sacrifice of mid-range torque. So our plan is to run those 3 camshafts through that 440 Chrysler. And to tell you all about that, the beauty is on duty. Mr. Steve Dulcich!
All right, put me in the Wayback Machine because I actually built this engine 20 years ago, and honestly, it hasn't been apart since then. Let me give you a little detail about the whole combination here. Most of the stuff is really stock passenger car equipment. I've got a stock 1969 block, I've got a stock forged steel crank, and I've got 67 440 heads, which I ported. Now, the block is filled with some high-performance parts to add durability and performance. I've got Eagle H-beam rods. I've got Arius pistons, which give me 12.66 to 1 compression with these cylinder heads. The bottom end has a Milodon stud kit, a Milodon deep sump pan, and a Milodon tray. Now, the real beauty of this engine is sitting right here, the glorious Wyand high ram tunnel ramp. I used this engine for all kinds of dyno tests for magazine articles, and one of the things I did was test a 4150 4-barrel combination, a Dominator setup with a single carb, and this, my tunnel ramp. And the tunnel ramp pretty much put everything else to shame. So we're gonna roll this thing into the dyno with the 106-degree lobe separation angle. We're gonna see what kind of power that makes, and we'll compare it to the other 2 camshafts. And more importantly for me, I get to see if it still makes the same power it did 20 years ago.
The only thing I know here is that I'm gonna get smarter by the time we're done. I've done this test before, but I think not knowing as much as I know now, so I'm gonna be able to look at more things and think through more camshaft event processes and get smarter.
And have more questions when you're done.
For sure, every single time.
Always the case.
And I'll have way less anxiety when we're done.
Are you still all torqued up?
Dude, yeah.
My favorite part about this episode, he's in charge of the mechanical stuff.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, but he's all freaked out. Every time Dulcich has his own engine on the dyno, he gets all twisted.
Why do you guys like it so much when I'm actually feeling a lot of consternation? I mean, why would that give you pleasure and joy? Seriously, I mean, we're all friends. We've been working together for a long time.
It's just the total reaction, and bringing you back down is really the fun part, telling you that it'll be okay.
I'd actually like to put this in a car now, but Steve, why don't you just put me out of my misery and get this test over with?
That's a good idea.
I can do that.
All right, we're gonna fire it up initially with the camshaft with 106 lobe separation angle. So we're gonna see big horsepower and find out what it makes on the 106. First of all, Dulcich, that's a stout iron head 440.
Yeah, I know.
It runs pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, here's our power numbers. It made 664.9 at 6,300 RPM, and I'm going to allow Dulcich to call that 665.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
And 614.1 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM. And I did the math. That's 1.36 pound-feet per cubic inch, which for 452 inches with an iron head is like pretty wowzer.
The iron head part's the most impressive.
Yeah. I mean, the tunnel ram's contributing to that, and so
Yeah,
is the 12.6 to 1 compression for sure. But still, to be able to even move the air through that small block head that they installed on 440s is not bad.
Not just iron, but an actual original equipment production iron
Right.
head.
Yeah.
It's a 67 440 cylinder head.
And
know,
Steve
that
put
was all
his
wind,
magic
Steve.
in. Boom.
So we're going, this is 106, and we're about ready to go 112. So we're spreading at 6.
Yep.
All right, here we
Right.
go. Cam swap. Brulé's going to watch. Dulcich is going to change, and I'm going to surf Instagram.
You can get that, Troy. You're strong as an ox.
Look at this. This is supposed to be a press fit, but Dulcich honed it so that we can do the swap really quickly. Nice.
All right, it did better than I thought. Because a lot of times when they heat up, they get stuck.
Yeah. A bunch of people have asked me what the point is of this unit right here, which is the Jessel, which is the brand, camshaft belt drive. People have seen this on that other big block that we were running, and on social media they asked me, what's the point of that? Does it make more power? Theoretically, supposedly, the rubber belt instead of the chain transfers less crankshaft harmonic to the camshaft. Does it matter on this? I don't think so, especially at an engine at this level. Maybe if you're running some pro stocker with all kinds of valve spring pressure, it's a different story. In this case, it's super handy for us because you can change camshafts more quickly, and it's got just an adjustable slip in it so that you can degree the camshafts like that. Do you agree with this, Steve?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So the convenient thing from a testing standpoint is a lot of times that's part of the process. We'll swing the camshaft forward and back a couple of degrees to see what the engine actually likes and optimize the tune-up with it.
Yeah, it just makes it super easy on cam timing is the main reason we run them. All right, now you just pull these out and cam out. That's a big time saver. These are good cams to keep too.
Yeah, they are.
Stabbing in the 112-degree lobe set cam.
All right, that's it. The engine's all back together. We've pulled out the 106-degree lobe separation angle cam, and we went with a 112. That's a big change, but we want to see a big difference. So we're going to take a look at what that does to the power curve.
Well, looking at the peak numbers, we just made 660 horsepower at 6,400 RPM and knocked the guts out of the torque at 587 pound-feet
Whoa.
at 5,100.
Really?
Yeah, but this isn't going to be a story about peaks. This is going to be a story about shape of the curve. So let's have a look at the graph.
Boom.
Oh,
Wow.
you would not choose to do that.
No, and that's what I was saying. It's just different modes, but the OEMs do it for idle quality and smooth and low emissions and no overlap and all of that.
You mean OEMs run wide lobe separation angles
it's
for all
wider.
of that?
Racers do it for stuff out here where this engine doesn't run.
Right.
And so all this is to me is just a loser.
So I think the other reason that we run them on big blocks is that we're running such a big lobe that when you spread it wide, you've still got overlap.
Well, or less overlap with the larger lobe, right?
Less overlap? No, what I'm saying
when you
is
spread
that-
them out.
Yeah, but obviously if you took the same cam and ran it narrower. But the lobe is so big that when you say it's on a 114, it's still got a ton of overlap compared with what you would do with a smaller lobe.
Yeah.
The smaller the lobe is, the more radical the change is on lobe separation angle, the effect on overlap.
Yeah, no, there's still a lot of overlap with the larger camshafts. But again, most of the time when you're looking at a camshaft that big, and whether it's a big block or a small block, the thing's revving up to 8,000 or 8,500 RPM. You're not trying to take advantage of a 112 or 14 lobe sep at 6,500 or 7,000.
Right.
You're looking for that advantage up higher.
I've been playing in that neighborhood so much recently that I forgot why when you flip through the cam catalogs, all the drag race cams are on a 106 or a 104 or 108. And that's why, because, I mean, we just killed this thing.
Well, even more so when you look at the catalogs, you'll see circle track stuff on 106s and that sort of thing because they want the torque coming out of the corner.
Wow, that's more dramatic than I was hoping for.
No, but that's okay because when I originally built this engine 20 years ago, the lobe sep I went with was 107.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was a production-based cylinder head, and it's a small cross-sectional area, so it's airflow limited at that displacement. Now, if I was doing a 383 with the same head, it might want to go a little bit wider and still be okay and run out the back door at a higher RPM.
Because of the RPM capability.
Yeah,
is
the
that what you're saying?
airflow to displacement, basically.
Okay.
So
I remember about 100 years ago, I remember a 360 cubic inch sprint car guy saying he was putting a 106 lobe sep cam in and that should help it out of the corners. And I just didn't grasp it.
Right.
This sure helps. This is real visual.
It's interesting because when I was completely ignorant of all this stuff, instead of just mostly ignorant about all this stuff, I used to think, I thought because drag race cams for small blocks and stuff, they are on 106 and 108, and they idle really ratty. I thought they were for RPM. It's not. That big overlap actually is for torque.
Mid-range. It comes on the cam.
Mid-range.
When it comes on the cam, which is where things tune together and it just gets that boost in torque right there in the mid-range.
And Comp Cams always does their shelf, not always, most of their shelf cams are on a 110 for a typical street strip engine. And I think that's for a balance between idle quality, because a 106 is ratty and lumpy and messy, and still making some of that mid-range power.
I think a 110 is probably, as far as a compromise, it kind of catches everything.
Okay.
You're not giving it away as like a 112 or 14 and getting very specific, and you're not getting that horrible idle like on a 104 or 106 or something. So a 110 is really a great compromise. But when you get more specific and the application and you learn a little more about this stuff, you start to look for those little small changes that you can make to enhance the performance of your application.
What I'm hearing a lot on this is that, unlike some of the other things that we do with camshafts, that in the world of the engines we deal with is fairly universal. Like you add duration, you add RPM, kind of. You advance the cam, you get more low end. You retard it, you get more high end. Those are like general rules. But what we're doing here with the lobe separation angle seems, based on what you guys are saying, to be more engine specific.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
and application specific.
Yeah, making it a bigger problem for the average guy to decide what to do, which is why you just default to 110. And this engine's kind of a tweener. It's not a normal street strip engine. It's weird because it has compression and a tunnel ram and a tiny cylinder head that you've improved. So maybe it wasn't the best thing to actually do this test on. Maybe we should have done it on a more typical engine.
I've seen the same test with a 350 or 383 Chevrolet and 10.25 to 1 compression. The results are really just very similar. I mean, these characteristics and, like you say, the engines that we typically deal with that's kind of the outcome.
So this is 106, this is 112. Is 110 going to be right between these two?
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, I think that was the meat of the episode, and now we're going to move on to seeing how much we can actually ruin Dulcich's 440.
How much power can we lose?
With 118. Let's go make it worse. Another cam swap coming up.
Can we run the cameras backwards and then finish with the, with the other cam? What I'm doing here is putting on the push rods. And here's a little tip, because if you just put the push rods in, they'll drop down out of position. But the simple trick here is just to put a little piece of welding rod across the rocker stands, and that'll build them up to just about the perfect height. You can drop the rocker shaft assembly on and the whole thing is ready to tighten and go. So you don't want to just like ramrod any of the 5 bolts holding the shaft down. That's going to stress the shaft because some valves are open or some rockers are going to be engaged. So you want to just kind of ease it down that way so you can avoid damaging the shaft.
Okay, I think we're done. Ready to go fire it up and find out how much power this camshaft kills. All right, Dulcich, brace yourself for disappointment.
No way, man. It might be the magic cam. The 118 might be the key.
We're going the wrong way on this episode.
I don't think so.
Well, our peak numbers here are once again destroying the torque curve. 575.2 pound-feet of torque at a peak RPM of 5,300. And the horsepower is basically the same, 659.9. Call that 660 at 6,500 RPM, which tells you why you never want to believe when somebody just tells you how much horsepower that their junk makes. Never trust engine masters when they only talk about horsepower, because we're about to show you why that's not the only thing that matters. There's the curve right there with our 118-degree lobe separation angle camshaft. We're going to overlay it with the 112, and there you go. The 112 is in red, and yeah, it's...
See, that's a trend we were talking about. Up here, where the street engines are kind of done,
Yeah.
is when the super wide lobe separation angle may actually start to have some advantage.
Well, it did actually raise the RPM at which peak power occurred by a couple hundred RPM.
It did. So you're saying if this was a 327 with a good cylinder head on it and you were going to run it to like 8,500 RPM, this might be the right thing to do?
Yeah, if you didn't care about anything it did below 6,500.
Okay, yeah.
You'd run it from 65 to 85. Yeah, it might be the right thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, now to show you just actually how devastatingly bad this really is, let's compare it to the 106-degree lobe separation angle where we started.
Oh, wow. You'd like that.
So clearly, the blue lines here are the best camshaft with the 106.
Look what it does here, though. With each step of wider lobe sep, it starts to carry a little bit better up here where we're not using it.
Why did it only float the valves or have a valve spring issue with the 106 cam?
I think the springs warmed up after Dulcich leaving the engine sit there for 10 years.
That's possible.
They've rejuvenated themselves.
It's actually possible.
The real meat of the story here is like right off the hit at 3,500 up through peak torque. I mean, it's just free power down there.
Up through peak torque. How about up through peak horsepower?
Well, okay.
It's all the way.
All the way.
All the way. That tight lobe separation angle's a win. And as disappointing as this was to go backwards in the power curve, the average power the whole time, it still taught me something. Because I'm still rolling around in my head the whole concept of like when you would want to pick something that has a really wide lobe separation angle versus when you wouldn't. We haven't talked about idle quality. We haven't talked about if you have EFI and you know, are more comfortable tuning it with a better idle quality, which you get with the wider lobe separation cam.
Idle quality, vacuum signal, all the things that EFI wants. That's part of the reason. Probably part of the reason that we see it in factory camshafts now versus, or in the fuel injection era versus muscle cars, 60s, 70s era stuff.
Well, and also the newer cars have much better cylinder heads than they did back then, which is why they can get away with those camshafts. It really speaks to what makes the LS so good.
Yeah.
Is that it can be, the combination of a great head and a small cam with a lot of lobe separation.
And then what about runner length, too? How is that going to affect it? You know, that's kind of a question mark still, but I would say the correct lobe separation angle is really specific to your combination and your RPM range.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't walk away from this and just say, oh, you want a super tight lobe separation in every case.
No, in fact, there aren't even, this is what I was saying earlier, there isn't a general trend that we can say. Like with duration, you can say you add duration, you increase your RPM at peak horsepower. You know, it pushes the RPM up pretty much universally until you saturate the cylinder head or whatever. But with this, it's really engine specific.
You guys have driven stick shift cars with type lobe sep camshafts, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And they
Aren't
buck.
they freaking miserable? I mean, it's just like this all the time. So there's a good reason. It's just for drivability.
Wow, that is an eye-opener, though. I mean, this test went too far on the wide. I would have rather seen us go like 102, 106, 112. The 118 is just off the plot.
But I think it's good for demonstration purposes. I mean, I think it shows us what the trends are.
All right. Let's get this baby off the dyno and sum it up, Freiberger.
Let's get this baby off the dyno and get that 106 cam back in its stat.
I know.
Absolutely.
Okay, Steve, with every test, we progressively castrated this thing more and more and more.
Oh, you know how to hurt a guy.
So I want to throw it back to the beginning to give you credit for making 660-something horsepower out of stock iron heads on a 440 with a stock stroke.
Well, thanks for the kudos, Freiberger.
It's really good.
I do appreciate it. I was pretty satisfied with that number.
It was great. I wasn't that satisfied with our camshaft testing results. I always have to scale my comments about these tests down to what I think is the average street strip muscle car guy with an engine like this. In other words, we're not dealing with Formula One or Pro Stock or even a guy trying to run 8s. It's a guy who's got anything from a daily driver to a 9-second muscle car.
Okay.
In that range, I would say pretty much get a camshaft with a 110-degree lobe separation angle, maybe a 108 if you're drag racing.
Right.
If it's a dedicated drag race car and it's only going to run up to about 6,500 RPM, get the 106.
Right.
I think that there's no real call for getting anything really wide like a 114 or something unless you're dealing with an LS engine with a fantastic cylinder head, or unless maybe you want really great idle quality with the FI.
Yeah, or if you've got a very, very high performance car or boat or something where you're revving it out to 7 or 8 grand.
Oh, that's when you would use a wider one, yeah, if it was really above 7 grand.
Another validation besides the horsepower, when I first put this together, and I used a comp roller cam back then, which is quite similar to what we tested today, I picked 107.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it made almost the same power as our 106. So there you go.
So there you go. I didn't learn a lot from the data that we actually saw here because we just kept on killing power. But I think it was definitely representative of the fact that you can go way wrong with lobe separation angle. And if you've got a question, basically pick the camshaft out of the catalog, look at the description. They've done a pretty good job of keeping you out of trouble. Comp cams for the win, and the Dulcich 440 tunnel ram motor for the win. How cool is this guy? It's time for more fun with 440 power. So between Roadkill and Engine Masters, we have really turned the Dodge Motorhome 440 big block into a cult superstar. Think back to Roadkill when we built that General Mayhem 68 Charger and tore a 440 out of a motorhome to install in the car. Later on Engine Masters, Dulcich took the 440 that was in the dirt everyday Winnebago and cleaned it up and hopped it up. And between episodes 53 and 58, we ended up making 392 horsepower with a stock long block. And that was pretty good. Now we're going next level by backing up to begin with, because I assure you, this particular turd will not make 392 horsepower. This one's more worn out than our other ones that we've had. It's from a 1978 Dodge Crew Cab truck. This thing has like 7.2 to 7.4 to 1 compression ratio. Everything about it is stock with the exception of a Comp Cams XE268H flat tappet camshaft and the valve springs to match. It'll have headers on it. It has an Edelbrock base performer intake manifold and a Holley 750. Now, what's gonna make this episode great is you're gonna learn a whole lot. First of all, we're gonna turbocharge it, because people keep telling us without low compression, it's built for boost. Well, we're gonna find out just how built for boost it is. Second of all, people keep asking me, how much better would those engines do if you put aftermarket cylinder heads on it? And we're gonna do that as well. So here's the program. First, we're gonna run this thing naturally aspirated as it sits right now. Second, we're gonna add a turbocharger. Third, we're gonna bolt on some TrickFlow Specialties aluminum cylinder heads. And then fourth, we're gonna add a turbo with the aftermarket heads. So look at all the stuff that you're gonna learn. How much does a turd bone stock 440 make with a cam intake and headers? Then you're gonna find out what you can do with a cheap turbo setup. Then you're gonna see what kind of power the aftermarket heads make naturally aspirated. And then you're gonna find out how much power it makes with a turbo and aftermarket heads. It's the episode that just keeps on giving. I should begin with an apology.
For
Bringing that into your shop.
you deserve to apologize. That engine is responsible for single-handedly changing Westex policy on junkyard engines.
What's that?
They don't come in the door anymore without hitting the hot seat first.
Oh, okay, grease pit.
That thing was hideous. I mean, there was literally chunks falling off of it. So.
Yeah. Steve's OCD, so he cannot handle a drop of oil on the floor, much less that turd. This thing, unfortunately, isn't going to make the power that yours did before, so you'll be happy to know you're going to win that.
Well, okay.
Yeah, it's a bit of a smoker, but we can fix that with the turbocharger. First, though, we're going to run this thing naturally aspirated and have a look at the baseline number. Ready?
I'm curious.
I'm gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's better than I thought.
Here's our baseline power, kind of what's expected. 447.7 pound-feet of torque at 3,500 RPM, and an even 350 horsepower at 4,900. Now, the last time we did a Motorhome 440 was episode 58, and it made 392 horsepower. But some things were different. You had that thumper cam in it that had a narrower lobe separation and more exhaust side, and we had degreed it to perfection, and it had a Performer RPM intake manifold instead of the base Performer, and it didn't smoke like this one.
I think I had a Street Dominator, single plane, for the 392
Did you?
horsepower run. Yeah.
Okay, maybe that was it, yeah. But nonetheless, a slightly different combination, which is why this one's down.
It also had the magic touch of the Dulcich. You forgot that part.
Okay, the next step is something I didn't really anticipate initially. We're gonna go install a Holley Street Dominator intake manifold, which is a single plane, because that's the unit I wanna use for the turbos later. So we're gonna do an A/B test on the Performer dual plane versus the Street Dominator single plane. Yeah. which
Makes
should be
sense to
better.
me.
Yeah. Let me go get it out of my Jeep. Okay, here we come. This intake right here is the first intake manifold I ever purchased. I got it at the street races in about 1986 for 50 bucks out of the trunk of some guy's car. So if it's hot and somebody has a stolen intake manifold over the past years, I apologize. There we go, Holley Street Dominator. Now this is a single plane intake, which normally means it would throw away a lot of bottom end torque, but this has unusually long runners for a single plane, and Dulcich says it's gonna make more power everywhere, but that's what we're here to find out. So Steve's gonna fire it up, and we're gonna watch. So our new peak power numbers are 444.5 at 3,600 RPM and 364.8 horsepower at 5,000, but that's not the whole story. Here you've got the red line being the Edelbrock Performer intake, the black line is the Holley Street Dominator, and I'm calling this a trade-off I would make.
Yeah, absolutely. This, like Steve had mentioned earlier, the converter will eat that up. You're right past that RPM almost immediately, and this is good stuff here.
That carries pretty good. I mean, I think that's entering the realm of real muscle car madness.
Think so?
Well, 365
horsepower.
That was an advertised number for a lot of legit muscle cars.
10 away from a 396. Yeah. Not bad. It's only a 440.
Or 5 over the hydraulic cam to 396.
There you go. Right. So what we're looking at basically is that it threw away some bottom end torque with the Street Dominator intake, but we don't really care because it's a small amount, it's below torque converter stall speed, and it made enough extra horsepower that we're happy with it. Happy enough that we're gonna move on to Boost.
Ooh, that's gonna be even more extra horsepower, hopefully.
Let's turbo this turd.
Turbo time.
Oh boy, I can't wait.
So here is our implement of boost. This whole contraption was put together by Richard Holdner, who tests here for his own YouTube channel, so you may have seen this before. However, we're running it with a different turbo, different intake manifold, and different cylinder head swap than you saw in his program. So he cobbled this just for dyno use. It doesn't fit any car, but it's pretty clever because it starts with stock Dodge 440 truck exhaust manifolds. They're not flipped upside down or anything like that. The hot side comes out of both manifolds, wise into the turbocharger, which is a BorgWarner S275. You can pick the eBay unit of your choice. It'll probably be similar, but we like the American-made unit there. On the cold side, this discharge right here feeds into a CSU carburetor hat, and we're also using a CSU carburetor, which is designed specifically for blow-through applications. We've used this a bunch out here at Westech, and it's pretty turnkey. How about all these hoses running everywhere? This is an oil feed line into the turbo. Had to punch a hole in the pan for the oil return line. Then, of course, you've got vacuum going down there to the wastegates, or I should say actually a manifold reference going to the wastegates, which are on the spring. We're gonna run about 7 PSI. We're not trying to kill this thing. That same manifold reference goes up there to the blow-off valve, and behind the hat, we have got our boost reference for the fuel system, which is also our boost pressure gauge. We've only got boost here in the hat, not in the manifold. So there you go. That and the O2 sensor to read air-fuel ratio to try and keep this thing alive. I don't want to blow it up, but I think we should make, I don't know, a couple hundred horsepower, 150? Let's see. Doesn't make it smoke any less, that's for sure. So we made 9 pounds of boost. And actually 1 pound of boost is a significant correction there. And it probably is gonna disappoint a lot of people, I think.
You think so?
Am I downplaying too much?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the news. It made 644.5 pound-feet of torque, which is wow. And it made 514 horsepower, which is probably people going, what? I thought you had a turbo. But the junk is stock. It's, you know, it's blowing smoke. It's got a tiny camshaft. It's got no cylinder head. Let's look at the curve and then compare it to naturally aspirated so you can see that this is actually a win.
Wow.
Wow. Wow on the curve. Okay. To be clear, in case you cannot figure it out on your own, these red lines are naturally aspirated. These black lines are under boost. So look at everything that went on here. First of all, how much torque did it pick up? From 433 to 632. So that's 200 pound-feet of torque. 200. How much horsepower did it pick up?
148.
148. Almost 150 horsepower. So I was sort of preparing the audience for the low 500 horsepower number. What's your take on that?
Well, it just won't run out the back door. I mean, you're RPM limited, so to get a lot of power, it takes a lot of boost and a lot of cylinder pressure, and we didn't want to blow it up. I mean, we're at 8 to 9 pounds of boost, and what if we were at 14 or 24? We'd have an engine blown up.
Yeah, you get to pick your power, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about ignition timing and what we did here versus the compression ratio?
As you compress or add cylinder pressure, the mixture ignites faster. And so you don't need as much ignition timing. But looking at something like this, the cylinder pressure really isn't any greater here than maybe with 12-to-1 compression.
Which you're judging on BMEP.
Yeah, brake mean effective pressure, which it's a theoretical number, but it's some representation of what the cylinder pressure is averaged throughout the power cycle.
And more importantly, it's a made-up number, but in your head, you know, well, a 13-to-1 compression engine is going to do this.
It's a number I see all the time.
Right.
So I
So
look at
what is the
12-to-1.
number here?
It was in the mid-180s.
Okay, so basically that's as if this was an, you know what? I bet you his 12.5-to-1 440 was right there.
It is.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So basically what we just did is ran this thing at 12.5-to-1 compression by adding air into the cylinders, which makes for more pressure. And because we're starting at 7.2 to 1.
Probably be a lot of guys that poo-poo and say you can't do that. but it's got 36 degrees of timing.
36 degrees.
Yeah.
But it wanted 42 naturally
Yeah, so it's back
aspirated.
some. I
Yeah.
mean, but the 42 was not big gains from 36 when we ran it earlier. It picked up 5 or 8 or something.
Well,
but
and that's
it was
because
just
it's such a steaming turd.
a pile.
Right? Anyway, I think if we had this turbo in a car, we'd be thrilled to death with 644 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah.
Let's go put some cylinder heads on it and see what the gains are, both naturally aspirated and under boost.
I think that might help quite a bit.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
The last couple times we've done motorhome 440s, a lot of people who are viewers have asked, what would it do if it had aluminum heads on it, aftermarket heads? So that's what we're about to find out. I've chose this TrickFlow Specialties head, TFS. First of all, it is fully CNC ported. We picked the model with the 240cc inlet ports instead of the MaxWedge style 270s. And on the chambers, first of all, the intake valve size is 2.190 inches. The stock 440 valve is 2.08 inches. So it's a huge difference. So these are way too trick for what we're doing. I really hope they make a big difference. If they don't, I'm gonna blame that engine because it is a pooch. Is that distributor gonna clear this thing? There we go. That was kind of a lot, but we got our super trick cylinder heads on our super junk engine with our really nice roller rockers and everything, and I really hope it makes power. Guess that's it. All right, we got 3/4 of a point more compression. We lost weight, not that that matters on the dyno, and we got a way better flowing head. So we're gonna pull it now, and hopefully it makes a ton more naturally aspirated power. Hit it, Steve. Our new power numbers for the 440 with the TFS aluminum heads are going to be 432.9 horsepower and 473.7 pound-feet of torque. Let's have a look at how it compares with those iron heads. Whoa!
Wow. That's huge.
That is a massive difference.
Pretty good head.
Yeah. I think the thing a lot of people might not realize, because you read so much about, oh, a bigger head is going to kill low-end torque. No. The stock head is so bad that this thing just makes power everywhere.
Well, yeah, 440 is like having a small block Chevy head on a big block. So
Yeah, by which he means the ports on the big block Chrysler are just way too small. They're like small block ports on a big block, as you can see by this. And even with a tiny, tiny camshaft, for it to make this much meat right here, that's absurd.
I'm going to show something else too. From where it made peak power before, the larger port, how much it carried. It changed where peak power occurs by about 400 or 500 RPM.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can use that all the way down the track too. I mean, RPM is going to be ET.
The great thing about this is that's a massive difference in power with no cost to drivability at all.
No, none whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, there's no downside to that swap. Yeah, that is a win for TFS right there.
Still want to put pistons and rings in it though.
Nah, turbo.
Turbo it.
Fix it.
Yeah, we'll remove the pistons for you.
Uh-huh.
So, ready to go hang that on there?
I'll do it.
All right,
That's good.
turbo. We're all dialed in with our aluminum heads with the turbocharger. We're gonna go see what this does. Fingers crossed for 600 horsepower and the short blocks staying together. Okay, go ahead, Steve. If it blows up, I hope he doesn't hurt my cylinder heads.
Oh, I know. I hope it doesn't blow up.
Me too. Oh, man, that thing's a smoker.
Wow. It just came a tick under your 600 number you were hoping for.
I think it's good enough. Maybe we should let it live.
Oh, no. Booster up, baby.
Look at that thing. So So I don't know if you were looking at gauges or what, but we saw a lot of smoke out of both the exhaust and the breather.
I couldn't watch the engine because I was doing this.
So first, can we look at the boost curves? See how similar we were to with the stock heads? So the blue line here is our boost with the iron heads, and red is with the aluminum heads. It's kind of the same. Our scale here is only 8.7 up to 9.2. So even though it looks like a radical change, it kind of isn't. All right, let's get to the meat of it though. The power. What did it make? And it made 652 pound-feet of torque and 592 horsepower. Missed my 600 guess by that much. This is the thing that we see all of the time. Whatever gain you make naturally aspirated is the gain that you see under boost. And there you go. With the same boost, the same engine, 2 different cylinder heads, the NA gain was about 75 horsepower and the boosted gain was about 75 horsepower.
Like they say, build the best NA engine you can because that's going to be the best boosted engine you can build.
Yep, I think that demonstrates that once again. What do you think, Dolchek?
I think, are you guys going to address the elephant in the room here?
Oh, no.
I mean, seriously, we're at 592 horsepower. If you had 8 more,
even Brule wants to fix it.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Steve want to turn up the boost before, ever?
he doesn't care about this motor because he thinks it's a turkey. But
When Troy was in the cell helping us earlier, I told him to move away from the side of the engine. Just make sure nothing hit him.
All right, I want to see your best impersonation of a millennial. Go in there and turn the knob.
I can do it.
All right, Dulcich, this is it. I'm calling it after this.
really?
How come I'm the one with like cold feet and Brule is the one who's like, hey, crank it up?
I know, it's like a role reversal.
It
deal.
is.
But the thing is, I don't know if this can make more than 600 horsepower or even make 600.
Yeah. Piston rings are done.
Yeah.
They're over.
She's had it, man.
Not happening. Yeah, but literally the piston rings will not handle more boost. We keep cranking up the boost and the power keeps dropping. It's just blow by.
That thing's had it, guys.
We have fun though. Did you see the torque number on that last
I
poll?
did.
Let's
I
have a
did.
look at it. 694.3 pound-feet of torque. And this is all at 3,600 RPM or something like that. Up top, it only made 589. Literally, we keep cranking boost into it. That number keeps dropping up there. This thing is happy at basically 9 pounds, making 590 horsepower and 650 pound-feet. That's the comfort zone of our turd of a 440.
Like Brule was saying, a set of rings, and maybe that gets a whole lot better.
By the time I've got the bottom end apart for a set of rings,
Yeah.
I'm putting it together the right way.
That makes sense.
That's kind of the point. We learned a lot here. So now with a fresh engine, then you kind of know where you're at already.
Yeah.
So
We did see that turbos definitely make power.
Well, and we also saw, once again, that NA power gains with the cylinder heads add right up to turbo power gains with the cylinder heads. At the same boost level, it makes the same increase. Cool.
Yeah.
Ready to wrap it up?
I am.
We can talk about you behind your back. That's what's going to happen right now. All right.
What's new?
What's new? I only have 2 things for you.
I'm ready for them.
One of them, I'm not going to even believe your answer because I know that you're just going to go straight to the Faith in Ma Mopar. What is the longevity of this short block?
Oh, take that much boost all day long. Are you kidding? Look, this thing's pretty worn out, and we hammered it with 9 or 10 pounds of boost, and it's no worse.
You really believe that the main caps and the rods are going to take that over and over and over and over?
The internet says the turbos are a lot easier on the bottom end at any given horsepower level, and I believe it.
But at main caps, why do they make girdles and everything for the Mopars if they can actually just hang?
Just for extra peace of mind and sell parts. All right?
Okay, well, I'll give you this. We know that 440s survive at 600 horsepower and beyond all day long. I don't know about the 700 pound-feet of torque down at lower RPM. That's my concern.
I got to give you that one.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% comfortable there either.
So I guess question 1, undecided. But we could find out. Question 2, should we reveal to the audience what we hope to do with this monstrosity?
Oh, I would not want to leave them hanging.
Our hope is that we will be able to take this very motorhome 440 and throw it in a car on Roadkill Garage. Will it happen? Well, that's question number 3, and we'll never really know, but that's our scheme. We will see you next time on Engine Masters. This is going to be a very special episode of Engine Masters, kind of like the Brady Bunch Goes to Hawaii, but a different kind of vacation, because I'm going to do my best to put you in our shoes to see what it's like to go behind the scenes for a day at the dyno here at Westech Performance Group in Mira Loma, California. What we're going to do is show you how you would show up with your engine prepared, why you would want to come to the dyno with your engine to begin with, how you hang it on the dyno. We're going to show you how the dyno works, look at how we break in an engine, how we tune it up, and of course, how to judge whether the engine is any good or not. All of that this time on Engine Masters. Now, let me tell you about this lovely engine that is going to be the victim of this episode. This is the COVID 350. You've probably seen it on my social media. You may have even seen it on an episode of Roadkill where we did sort of a working from home deal with me and Finnegan, and I assembled this out of parts that were literally left over in my garage, which I know looks really greedy, but this represents 30 years of hoarding parts. Let me tell you what it's all about. First of all, it's a 355 cubic inch small block Chevy, very standard stuff. It's just got a stock cast crank, H-beam rods, forged pistons. It is 11 1/4 to 1 compression, which makes it pretty good. And it allowed me to do things like install a big solid roller cam. It's a Comp Cam's off-the-shelf unit. The duration at 50 is 242, 248. I've got rocker arms on it with a 1.65 to 1 ratio for 600 lift, which makes it good because you can walk around going, I got 600 lift. Now, the cylinder heads you should recognize because they've been on that 383 small block that you've seen on a cajillion episodes of Engine Masters. They're the Blueprint Engines 210cc CNC ported heads. Up top, Holley 850 double pumper that just really stabbed my hand on that vent. That really hurt. And I've got an Edelbrock Super Victor intake manifold on it, MSD ignition. We've already got the dyno headers on this thing, and it is mounted to the dyno cart. And we've got the special flywheel installed, which I will show you once we get inside the room and take you behind the scenes on this dyno test. Let me get this thing out of here. One of the things you got to pay attention to is not knocking the engine off the cart, because right now it's not actually attached at the back. So first of all, why would you even want to dyno test your engine? Well, first of all, because it's really fun. I guess one of the big deals for me is if you have a brand new engine like this, you can break in your cam if you've got a flat tappet cam. That's huge. But you can also make sure nothing's gonna break before you put it in the car. Leak checking is a really big thing. And of course, you can get a baseline tune-up for both your ignition timing and your carburetor or EFI. And of course, you get to walk away with the horsepower number and brag to all your friends that you have dyno proven power. When you bring your engine in, you want it to be as complete as possible. Once you get your engine here at the shop, it'll get mounted onto a rolling cart like this, which is super handy. You want to have motor mount brackets on it to hang it on there, and they'll install a flywheel that matches the balance to your engine. So if the dyno shop you're dealing with doesn't have that, if you've got, I don't know, a Ford FE or something that they're not commonly dyno testing, you want to make sure you've got that. They'll bolt on this drive plate that has a hub in it, like a clutch with springs, that's going to mount here to this spud that attaches to the dyno. And of course, there's a regular old bell housing, like a manual transmission bell housing, that's also used to couple it to the dyno. In our case here, you don't have to run a starter on the engine. There are twin starters under here that attach to the dyno itself, so we don't have to deal with matching that all up to a flex plate and wiring that every single time. But some dynos actually, you have to have a starter with them. I don't have a lot of experience with other types of dynos other than this, but there are some that do not require a bell housing or a flywheel, and they have more of sort of a drive shaft situation and different methods of mounting the engine to the cart. So you can ask those questions before you go to the dyno shop. So they've pre-leveled the thing, because one of the deals is it's got to go in this way, but it's also got to be leveled up and down, and it can't be like this. We used to fight with this a whole lot more. And Brule is the only guy who sticks his arm in the bell housing and has the trust that nobody's going to wiggle the engine and pinch his finger off.
As David was explaining kind of the rear of the drive system, the flywheel and all that, we've now slid it onto the input shaft, which is just not dissimilar to like an old Muncie 1 3/8" 10 spline. What we have here is a water brake or an absorber, which basically is for lack of a better term, it's a variable speed torque converter. It's controlled with a servo on the bottom, which either holds or releases water to maintain engine RPM and load. What we're doing is measuring torque with what's called a strain gauge or a load cell, and basically what it is kind of an electronic rubber band which changes in millivolts. So it's actually calibrated, and then we actually measure torque. And between torque and RPM, we calculate horsepower. So there are observed channels and measured channels. Basically, this is the brain of the thing back here, this control box. We're monitoring fuel pressure and oil pressure, all of those things. But the meat of any engine dyno is really measuring torque, engine speed, which calculates to horsepower. All the other stuff is kind of things to look at the health of the engine or the potential of the engine.
So he's hooking up the oil pressure, I'm hooking up the fuel lines. You can see that we have both an A and a B fuel line here, and you'll often see Steve looking at the fuel flow on each bowl to sort of judge what's happening with the jetting in each end. So all of the water stuff that we deal with all the time, I never know what valves you're opening and closing and what the huge tank does outside and the heat exchanger and all that stuff.
Well, as far as the stuff I'm adjusting on the capacity valve and that sort of thing, it's really to kind of contour the absorber to the power output of the engine, because that electronic servo only has a certain amount of sweep. And so I'm basically increasing...
The servo being the dump, basically?
Yeah, the dump, the electronic dump that's controlled by the computer.
The releasing the water out of the torque converter, so to speak.
So what I'm doing with that capacity valve back there is kind of contouring the ability of the absorber for more or less torque, which is more or less water, because we want to keep that servo in a sweeping range for the RPM range we're running it. And so I basically reduce the water or increase the water for engine torque.
This is actually the Westech Super Custom Stainless Steel handmade water tank. It's got a radiator cap that goes here up on the top. And then this is a water-to-water heat exchanger. So there's tubes that run inside the thing and water that goes around the outside of it. And so you got cool water from the giant tank, and then you've got water out of the engine. And it works like a water-to-water or an air-to-water intercooler, basically, except for it's water-to-water.
This is one of the fuel turbines. Basically what it is, it's a little paddle wheel inside of this housing, and it has an optical pickup. So as that paddle wheel spins, it's actually counting. And so as the fuel passes through and goes up to the B turbine, we're able to count the fuel in pounds per hour and actually ultimately calculate that into gallons if we want to. What we're able to do is we have an A turbine and a B turbine, which allows us to read the primary and secondary bowl of a single 4-barrel carburetor, or primaries and secondaries in, let's say, a tunnel ram carburetor. What that allows us to do is make sure that we're not rich on the front, lean on the back, or left and right with a tunnel ram, those sorts of things. It's just another piece of the equation for data that we can look at to help us tune.
Steve showed you about the fuel flow and how that's measured. Also, fuel pressure is internal to the dyno. Some of the instrumentation that we do that involves the engine, well, this is dyno. We deal with water temperature here. That's what this is reading. We've got oil pressure hooked up just like you normally would with your odometer gauge on your dash. It just connects to the dyno. We also have a wideband oxygen sensor here. Sometimes we'll run 8 of them in every single header tube so we can look at the air-fuel ratio cylinder to cylinder. On a standard deal like this, we'll just put one of them in a collector. It's obviously about 18 inches back from the opening so it doesn't get oxygen contaminated. And speaking of contamination, the other thing is if we have a brand new engine that's never run before, especially if it's a customer that Steve doesn't trust, like, you know, Dulcich or somebody like that, we'll not put the oxygen sensor in for initial fire up just so that it doesn't get wet with water, oil, overly rich mixture, any kind of disaster. This is run before and it's already broken in. So we will start with this all hooked up. I can never find the plugs once they're thrown over. That's why we need Troy. Watch this. Hey, Troy. See? Pork chop's good that way.
One of the other pieces of equipment that we frequently use, and we have actually in past episodes when we're trying to kind of figure out why an engine makes more or less horsepower and we're looking at airflow, Basically what this is, it's a little generator and it measures airflow down through the carburetor. And then again, it's calibrated to the electronics on the dyno, but it's got this aluminum honeycomb, a little fan there, and it actually, as air is moving through the carburetor, it spins the little fan. And again, it's calculated. We don't hardly ever, well, we did once, use this when we were running nitrous, and we don't any longer because this is really very fragile honeycomb to kind of direct the air and make sure that it's straight and the fan operates properly. But any sort of backfire or anything can damage this thing really easily. So this is really more like development sort of stuff, not necessarily having to run it on every engine every day.
Okay, Steve, before we fire this thing up, what are like the most common questions that you get from new customers or people who show up here for the first time?
I'll get emails that say, how much does it cost to dyno my engine? A little more information, please.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times things will come over the internet and it's very vague, and there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, I really want to talk to someone on the phone. I want to ask them about water pump and configuration and pulleys and whether it's EFI or carbureted.
Blown turbo, some crazy contraption with 2 blowers and 3 turbos.
E85 or gasoline, all the way down to the point of, if you're bringing your headers, have they recently been coated?
Right.
Or are they seasoned? Because does it have a flat tappet? Does it have a roller? I mean, all of those things play one part to the other, so.
So on the header coating, if you break in the engine with a fresh set of coated headers, it bakes it off, right?
Now it's a bubbled coated header.
It completely ruins it. That's something I wouldn't have ever even considered for this,
Yeah, you have to season them, and you can't season them with a flat tappet very well, so. We'll use our headers first, break the camshaft in, then put their headers on after the camshaft's broke in to season their header, and then run it with their headers.
Do you recall ever getting this kind of care?
Oh, all the time. But I'm kind of curious, have you ever had someone come in so underprepared that you had to send them home, or?
It's worse than he ever has been.
I mean, the worst one I remember is I had a short block. Outside, when you came in, I was sitting on the curb porting the heads and had to get the thing tested that day.
Okay, so you want to walk us through what you would be doing for an initial break-in thing? You want to go start it and show what Troy's going to work on and et cetera?
Sure, absolutely.
Walk us through as if we're ignorant, because as you know,
well,
we're not.
Troy's out in the cell, which he normally is on startup, and we're going to check for any sort of fuel leaks initially. We're going to crank it for oil pressure before we start it. We're just going to check some real basic stuff. And then upon startup, he's going to do a walk around and inspection. He's got a heat gun in his hand, so he can go ahead and check and make sure we've got temperature in all 8 cylinders. He'll take a listen to the valve train, and then he'll go ahead and check timing for me. And we've been doing this long enough together, we've kind of got a hand signal program worked out, so we really don't have to talk to each other much.
Brule, being old that he is, he's hard at hearing, so we have to use hand signals. So what's going to happen is when Steve is in there and getting ready to fire it up, I will be ready with the temp gun and check the temperature of each cylinder and make sure they're all firing right.
This engine happens to have a solid roller camshaft, so my typical procedure would be to just start it up, make sure that we have base timing set. I'm going to warm it up to kind of test temperature, and then we're going to shut it off, and I'm going to go out and relash the valves after initial startup, just so I'm comfortable with that. Once we come back in, I'll run it through a break-in cycle, and then we'll start along our test procedure. So I can show you what some of that stuff looks like. And all we're doing right now is just letting it get up to some sort of reasonable operating temperature. It doesn't have to be 160 or 80. If it were a circle track engine, we would run it much warmer. This happens to be kind of a street and drag race engine, so we're going to actually run it in the 130-ish range. And so this is at about the point in time where I would just shut it off and go out and relash the valves just to make sure that we've got some temperature in it. They're all adjusted accurately. Okay, so we've got the valves lashed, and now I've come back into the console. One of the things that I think is interesting, and it's a story I like to tell, is, you know, people say, well, why do I want to break it in, or how does that work by cycling the engine up and down and varying the RPM range? In the old days, somebody would tell you that you wanted to break it in by just going on a drive where it was kind of up and down hills and varying the throttle position. But I had an opportunity to look at a big block Chevrolet that someone had forgot to put an oil ring spacer in. It was a Stroker 496. And during the break-in cycle, I could see the engine smoke out of the passenger side header. And as the RPM increased, the smoke would go away. It would get to a little higher level, and it would smoke out the driver's side. So I was actually able to kind of visually see externally how the oil kind of fanned through the engine. So the whole idea was to keep the camshaft lubricated, to keep oil on the cylinder walls while they're seating, and to keep everything lubricated. So it was just kind of fun to be able to see what's actually happening inside the engine during the break-in process. So we'll go ahead and get it started up and run it through a break-in. Just gently bump it up to 3,100. And it's going to cycle it from 31 down to 27, back up to 31. We've run this engine before with a different carburetor. In the interim, we've changed carburetors because David's actually going to put this in a car, and this is the carburetor he'd like to run. Even just trying to bring it up to an RPM and load to break it in, the air-fuel ratio is so lean, we can't continue. And that's part of why you take things in small steps. We're gonna have to go out and address the carburetor issue a bit and upjet the primary circuit on the carburetor just to get the thing to cruise smoothly and to be able to run through the break-in process. This has a 72 jet in it. Typically I see 80 to 82 jets in these. I'm putting a 79 in it just to give it some fuel, and we'll I'm sure probably have to readjust some from there, but we just got to be able to make it run and not be so lean that it stumbles and runs hot.
Another thing that can make it lean like that is a really radical vacuum leak, which, by the way, on the dyno doesn't seem to matter at wide open throttle at all, but it'll affect like the drivability and the idle and stuff like that. So as soon as we ran out here, I started to look and see if the carburetor was missing any plugs. The one in the back was cracked, so is this one in the front. So that wasn't the problem, the jetting was the problem, but nonetheless, that's the type of thing that you can find out before you get the engine in the car.
Well, we got one full pull under our belt now. We ran it from 35 to 6,500. I can tell you that the engine's healthy. It's got a couple of little tune-up things that I think can be improved on, but before I go any further, since this thing belongs to David, and I always like Steve's opinion, I think I'm gonna go out there and talk it over with those guys.
The best part of this is I think Dulcich is really gonna like it.
I do like it already from
Really?
what I've seen.
Oh,
Yeah.
you've been watching the data?
Oh, you bet I have.
I knew you'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's have a look and see where we need to go. Really, the power is still on a little bit of a climb. We stopped at 6,500 RPM, and right there we're making 502.9 horsepower. So obviously that crests that 500 goal and only gets better from here. As far as torque, and we are looking at corrected numbers here, which Steve will explain in a minute, 442.7 at 4,800 RPM. So our spread, and we often look at this, the spread between the RPM at peak torque and the RPM at peak horsepower is 4,800 all the way up to 6,500. So that's an 1,800 RPM spread, which is good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Kinda what we typically see in LS stuff that's good.
Yeah. No, we really like to see that because it basically means the package is working.
Yeah.
It's not very what we would call peaky. Like if you saw the spread from 5,800 to 6,500, that's an engine that's only operating in that range, whereas this thing's fairly happy throughout the entire curve.
Yeah, it's a beautiful curve.
Yeah.
This is kind of almost an ideal situation when I look at an initial break-in and some testing. It's a little bit rich, not horrible.
So you say it's a little bit rich. We're looking at air-fuel ratio, which is the mixture of air and fuel as measured by the oxygen sensor in that tailpipe that I showed you, or in that header collector. And it starts out at 11.5 to 1 and ends up at about 12 to 1. We would call that rich because we're gonna target this thing later at 12.5 to 1 to 12.7 to 1.
What I generally do is on a normally aspirated engine is my target is horsepower. Wherever it makes the best power is the right air-fuel ratio. And I will sometimes see that at 12.2, and I'll sometimes see it at 12.8.
Okay, fair
So
point.
we're just going to let the engine tell us what it wants.
Let me ask you this. When we start doing our timing sweeps, do you ever see timing affect the air-fuel ratio?
Slightly, not nearly as much as people think. I mean, they think as soon as you add timing, it's going to get a whole bunch leaner. We might see it move a tenth or two, but I'm not going to see big swings in air-fuel ratio.
Okay.
The other thing I like here is the oil pressure. It's got a really nice curve all the way up. And we were looking at that as we kept moving up in RPM, making sure all of those things were right.
So as far as the fuel mixture, we talked about air-fuel ratio. The other thing Steve looks at for drivability and just sort of the overall happiness of the carburetor is fuel flow in pounds per hour into the front and rear bowls individually. What do you see in there?
Well, what can happen is the air-fuel ratio can look like it's in a good range, but the front of the engine could be extra lean and the back of the engine extra rich, but it averages out to appear to be okay. So with this, I'm verifying that it has equal fuel flow in the front and rear. In a perfect situation, you would have good drivability, good wide open throttle, and at wide open, those would be well balanced. That's a perfect situation. We get close. This thing looks really encouraging here. We're only a couple of pounds off, and we know it's rich, and we know it's rich at cruise, so we're gonna be able to lean the whole carburetor out a little bit.
So tell me what we're gonna do next.
2 and 2.
2 and 2. Yeah, back at Chuck Willery. I remember that. I'm thinking we take 3 and 3 out. You know, just something to get us closer. On this size carburetor, generally 4 jets out of the front and the rear will knock about a ratio out of it. So I don't want to get too greedy right away. Well, 2 is fine, 2 or 4. Get it into a range where I think the timing will actually make some effect, and then make that 1 jet change, then we'll do a timing change, then go back and finish it off with jet again. And I think you got a package.
Okay, watch this. Have you noticed Dulcich hasn't had much camera time in this episode yet?
I know.
Yeah, so he should probably go change those jets.
Oh, wow, you're just putting me to work forever.
I always find a way.
He's so benevolent. Well, as it turns out, the air-fuel ratio numbers appear to look like they're in a better spot, but it actually lost about 4 or 5 horsepower. So, like we had talked about earlier, is we kind of just let the engine tell us what it wants, and sometimes they want to be richer. So we're going to go back to the jetting, so it's very similar to what it was, richen it up just a little bit, and then go ahead and chase the timing.
The carb's fully dialed in now, and the next step is going to be taking a look at the timing. We had a base setting very conservatively at 32 degrees, so we're going to bump that up to 34 and then test it again and see if it picks up any power. If it picks up a lot, we may even go further to 36 until it stops giving us an improvement. So I'll just give the distributor a little twist, and then I'll give it a check with the timing light.
Now we're ready to look at some data. To review, we ended up first dialing in our fuel curve and then going to the ignition timing. So let's look at what we learned there.
So this is actually after changing the primary jet because it wouldn't even run to break it in.
Right, fair point.
So we added some fuel there. So we were a little closer than it may have been, but we couldn't run it the way it was. And so that's what we had there.
Okay, so let's compare that with what we ended up with our fuel curve. And I will say our jet changes on this thing were, after that initial step where it was way too lean, we were talking tiny. We never change 1 jet number at a time in a Holly, like for example, from 72 to 73, but we did that today, which was kind of dumb, but it worked.
Okay.
There you go. Big difference just from a couple of jet numbers right there. So that's one of the reasons why you want to come to the dyno. You've now got a baseline. I have found that when you take the engine off the dyno and put it in a car, you don't necessarily get the same results. It's not going to track the same air-fuel ratio numbers because of underhood heat, what you've got for an air cleaner,
Exhaust.
scoop, exhaust. Yeah, when you put an exhaust system on it, it tends to like richen it up, all those things. But it gives you a point to start from.
Yeah, and it depends on the application too. I mean, when we do some of the drag boat stuff, it comes off the dyno, goes in and never gets touched, and they're pretty much spot on. But again, they have the same fresh air, open headers. It's a much more similar situation. So anytime you change other components, mufflers, exhaust system under the hood temp, air filters, air cleaners, that type of thing, it's going to change some of the results.
So now let's just look at our best curve after we adjusted the fuel and compare that with the timing that we were messing around with. And we did end up changing the timing from an observed 30 degrees to 32 to 35 and even 36. And it was really insensitive above 32 degrees. At 30 degrees, man, it threw away power. I've never seen 2 degrees make that kind of a change. As a matter of fact, I think because Troy initially set it up and then you were looking at it, I think it was a different parallax on the light and comparing the mark in a different place.
I suspect that we probably were looking at it a little differently because I got it right and Troy did his best.
Well, that's one reason why often we have a rule here. If it's your engine, you set the timing so that you can repeat it in the car. We didn't do that this time.
Yeah.
Although, you know, my crew chief here probably will be dealing with that engine if it ever gets in the car, so we're good. But anyway, we found the optimal timing for it, which is an indicated 34.
Right.
Okay, and how did that look? Not a whole lot different. As a matter of fact, it's down just a little bit right here, just from variance from test to test. But
Freiberger, I have to confess, I honestly think that's the difference between 34 and 35 degrees.
Yeah,
so 1 degree difference. And
Yeah.
it's virtually an overlay. That's within dyno variation, if you ask me.
Which is really another point, I think. If you go to a dyno shop and they run the thing a few times and they can't overlay a curve like this, there's a problem going on. That's one of the things that makes Steve great is he's like paying attention to not just the coolant temperature, but in his head, he's also thinking about the combustion chamber temperature, because you can have the same coolant temperature whether you just rushed a bunch of water into the engine and the chambers are still hot, or whether the thing's actually settled. And his dyno brain has got that sort of dialed in.
Well, it just kind of turns into muscle memory after this long, but you've seen me do it. Let the engine idle for a while so the combustion chamber temperature drops, even though the water temperature still reads the same. The combustion chamber temperature is lower, and it'll make more power.
Yeah.
So you can play little games like that, and we try really hard not to, because we want it. We want every test to be a comparison. We don't want to just have random numbers. I love the engine dyno because it's so much easier to do that with the equipment we have than it is on a chassis dyno when you have even more variations.
And finally, the punchline we all want to know when we go to the dyno, which is what is our peak power numbers? And the COVID 350 barely breaks into that 500 that everyone wants to see. It's 501.9 horsepower at 6,500 RPM. And by the way, in previous tests, we ran this thing all the way out to 7, and it carries very nicely. And once again, the spread between peak torque and peak horsepower is huge. At 4,700 RPM, we made 447.7 pound-feet of torque. So now, you may heap the praise. Now, I understand these days 500 horsepower is no big deal, but what we do to look at an engine and decide if it's good or bad is more than just the peak power number, because a 500 horsepower 540 big block Chevy is worthless. A 500 horsepower 355 Chevy on pump gas is pretty good. So let's talk about how we decide that.
Well, I mean, for me, the number to look at is always specific torque. And that's because the torque that you produce per cubic inch just falls in a narrow range, and you can judge if you're on the upper end of that range, man, you're doing pretty good. If you're on the lower end, then not so much. So where are you at, Freiberger?
So what he's talking about is pound-feet of torque per cubic inch, specific output. It is 1.26 on this engine.
Okay, that's a very respectable number for a pump gas engine for sure. Wouldn't you think, Brule?
No, absolutely. Kind of the number I use in my head a lot, and because I have seen a lot of engines kind of end up there that were good. And on an average, I would say some of the best pump gas stuff that's a true street engine, 10 1/4, 10 1/2 to 1 with a really good cylinder head and a hydraulic roller camshaft, they end up, kind of a target for me is 1.25.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see a lot of iron-headed stuff down at 1.15, some pretty decent stuff, 1.2. So at 1.26, That's a
pretty
really good number for pump
And
gas.
the specific horsepower output, horsepower per cubic inch, is 1.41. Also pretty good for something like this.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that was a lot of really technical gobbledygook, but I hope you realize on every episode how much fun we have going through it and sort of nitpicking it and discovering why power is great and what engines are good and what engines are bad. And on that note, I'm not satisfied yet with you guys having told me that this is a great engine. I'd like a little bit more.
Okay.
If you could just sort of feed it in. No, it's not
Very
that
good.
awesome, but it actually came out pretty good. It's a fairly good street 355.
There's no question it turned out really well.
I can remember being in high school or my earlier years, you didn't go to the dyno, you know, you couldn't afford it at the time. There weren't that many dynos around, as a matter of fact, but if you're an engine geek and you want to improve your game, the dyno is where you do it because you have all this data. You could get all that feedback. Oh, is that working? Is that making it better or worse? You get dyno brain brulee and your buddies there. And, you know, like the dyno is probably one of my favorite things. So,
Well, it is me too. You just made it sound so fun.
Oh,
All
it
we
is.
really need is beer. Can we work that out next time?
There's some in the fridge
Oh,
right
that'd
now.
be fantastic.
I'm
All
on my
right,
way.
we're out for that.